Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we are closing out 2022 with a special panel where each of us will be selecting our top 5 films of the year. We're going to start by talking a little bit about a few of the films that we caught during the, what I like to call the award season sprint of November to December. And then we're going to go through our top 5 films, and there will be roughly 2 special awards that'll be paired with each one of our top picks. And we'll get to those here in a moment. But joining me are 3 of our most frequent collaborators here on the Cinematic Schematic. First and foremost, my co-host and award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker, Laron Chapman. Laron, welcome back to Cinematic Schematic, sir.
Look, I love any excuse to spend more time with you throughout the year, Caleb. So thanks for having me. That's the real Christmas gift, you know.
Likewise, Laron, I'm flattered. Also rejoining us, he's the co-host of the GoodTrash Genrecast and a GoodTrash Media co-founder, Dalton Stuart. Dalton, welcome back.
Hi, Caleb. It's very good to be here. I've come not with takes, but thoughts and ideas.
I need to think about that idea for a second here. Right. Dalton, always a pleasure to talk movies with you as well. I hope you had a great holiday season with the movies. Yes,
I did. It's always a good holiday season. Look, it's me. It's the holidays. That means I'm watching a lot of movies. That's what's going on.
Exactly. That's what's the best part about the Christmas New Year's sprint. And last but certainly not least, joining us as a contributor here at the Cinematropolis, he also writes for Flick Attack, Oklahoma Gazette, and a lot of other cool places around the world, like World Literature Today.
Whoa.
Daniel Bokemper, welcome back to the Cinematic Schematic.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I wore my finest film criticism shirt just for the occasion.
It literally says film critic on the shirt.
It does, so everyone knows.
Oh, man. So we have a lot in store for today's conversation. I think it's going to be a little longer than maybe some of our in-depth reviews. But before we get into any of the awards that we're going to be discussing today, I wanted to note this is one last opportunity. If you've been listening to us throughout the year, I think I counted there's been around 35 podcasts. If you've been listening throughout the year and you've enjoyed the conversations, really give us a little bit of a holiday cheer. Wrap up the year well with a little review and rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leaving us those will go a really long way and set us up for a great 2023. All right. Well, gentlemen, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the air quotes award season sprint, but we did, several of us around the table through one means or another, did attend some of these award season screeners that the studios send out, usually the months of November and December, to try to entice us to vote for their films. And podcasts just like this, or in the case of Daniel Bokemper, the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle. Dalton, I know you guys have the Shelfie Awards on the GoodTrash Genrecast. So anyway, they're trying to entice us to vote for those movies there. So a couple I wanted to note that we did not have time to review proper on the Cinematic Schematic. I want to start with The Whale.
I know these rules can feel constraining, but remember, the point of this course is to learn how to write clearly and persuasively. Think about that. Think about the truth of your argument. You're an amazing person, Ellie. I couldn't ask for a more incredible daughter.
Are you actually trying to parent me right now?
Who would want me to be a part of their life?
I mean, this one's been buzzed about all year long. I want to say, gosh, where did was it Cannes that it premiered at? I don't know. It was a film festival very early this year, and the story was Brendan Fraser. He's back. Daniel Bokemper, what did you think of The Whale?
Yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I think Fraser deserves all of the acclaim he's getting right now, and I'm sure that's going to translate into more than a few accolades if it already hasn't. It's also it's a powerful dissection of depression itself. And I think in some ways it takes some of the ideas that Aronofsky was exploring with like a film like Requiem for a Dream and somehow manages to take those just a little bit further. Its screenwriter, Samuel Hunter, also the original playwright of the 2012 play, The Whale. He is abundantly apparent. I think this is in a way one of Aronofsky's most like directorially passive films, so he doesn't feel as much of a presence. He's still there. It's still an Aronofsky film, but he I think he takes a back seat to the writing and the playwright ultimately. And to that end, it sometimes makes the film feel just a little less organic than what I think some of his better films, like for me, The Wrestler, I feel is particularly organic, and this one kind of loses a little bit of that. Doesn't necessarily
We
make
say less
it,
organic, you mean a little more like a play. A little more
yeah,
staged.
so it's a little more stilted, and it's blocked as such too, and it takes from that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, considering the source material. But again, some minor reservations, but overall, I do think it's great.
Laron Chapman, what was your take on The Whale?
I echo a lot of what Daniel said. I'm singing the Brendan Fraser's. I'm on that train. I'm give him his flowers. I think that I've always thought he was a charismatic actor. I've never really seen him as a dramatic actor. So I was actually just excited about the prospect of him being in a Darren Aronofsky project, and seeing like what that was how that was gonna challenge him as a performer. And so that was the most compelling aspect of it for me. I do think the film is moving. It is incredibly bleak. So I have to remind people who go to see it, that you're not going to feel good after this movie, and you're not supposed to. I will say I think it was less nuanced than I would have liked it to be. I had hoped that it wouldn't be so theatrical because I did know that it had, other roots. So there are certain moments that I could see would work really well, on a stage or in a book that on film in a more intimate setting feel a little bit, organic. It doesn't feel true to life.
Certainly not quite as nuanced as you would expect.
Yeah. But any scene with him and Hong Chow, for me, just that got to the heart of the human story for me. And so that, for me, transcended a lot of the flaws that I had with the actual production. So I think it's worth seeing for sure for Brendan Fraser. I agree that's touched on some really topical themes. I just think that some of the dialogue for me rang a little bit hollow, in the way that it was delivered, at least. So
yeah. So I mean, it really you're thinking the performances are sort of rise to the top. Yeah.
They're the takeaways here for sure.
Dalton, had you seen The Whale yet?
Blind spot for me. I have not gotten to this one yet. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a 1999's The Mummy stan. We love Brendan in my household. Like Hong Chow a lot. I'm looking forward to this one, but haven't caught it yet.
Yeah. Well, highly recommend. It's now playing. If you're listening, it's now playing here in Oklahoma City, and I believe it's. I don't want to say a fully wide release. I don't know how many theaters, but I want to say it's around.
Not all.
It's like somewhere around 1,000 or less theaters around the country right now. But in most major cities, you can find the Whale playing currently.
But I don't think you'll see any better acting this year.
No,
I haven't seen a strong enough performer in that category. So I think that at least is the takeaway.
Everyone in the movie, I think Samantha Morton might be the weak link, but she's really only in one scene, and she's not bad. I just want to reiterate, it's just compared to even like Sadie Sink shows up and just drops a performance. I like her. I just didn't know she was of that caliber. I mean, Hong Chow's top notch. Yeah, I think I'm not going to spend too much time on my take other than to say I think a little more nuance would have been good. I think, Daniel, you actually did a great job covering this in your essay that we published on the cinematropolis.com last week. On the surface, it's really diving into obesity, but it's really more about emotional trauma, depression, anxiety. And it's clear that it's about the latter, but they definitely don't go nearly as deep into the latter, nor do they sort of make I would say, the most nuanced tie between obesity and anxiety, depression. And as I said, my Letterboxd review, it's just such a long time to be so very sad.
Yeah,
it's a long movie, and there's really.
I'll never eat pizza or meatball subs the same way.
I tell everyone you're never going to eat meatball subs the same way after that movie.
No.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one, which is Babylon.
When I first moved to LA, signs on all the doors said, no actors or dogs allowed. I changed that.
And now, y'all ready for something different? Whoa!
Dalton, you were just telling us before we started the recording, this was the last film you saw in the theater. What did you think of Babylon?
Oh, what do I think of Damien Chazelle's mixed bag Babylon? I wanted to like it a lot. I really did. I went into this ready to get my world rocked. $80 million, an auteur-driven writer-director feature, fourth one in the can, big movie stars, a big 3-hour-long epic about, the city of lights and magic and dreams. What a drag. What a slog. I want to like this movie. I know there are people who love this, especially the ending. I know is really connecting with some people, as you were mentioning off air, Caleb. I want to like this more than I do. I think there's some good stuff in here. My friend Kirsten said that there's a 2-hour masterpiece in here, and I think that that's pretty close to the truth. I think that there's some stuff in this movie that I really responded to. And in a shorter movie, I might have gone for the ending. But without spoiling too much, I'll say this. It's a movie that places a lot of emphasis on the emotional catharsis of crying in a movie theater. And I love that shit. Love to cry in a movie theater, folks, if you don't know that about me. And this movie did not connect with me in that ending. And again, I'm primed for it. I am the target audience for this movie's ending. Nothing. So, I definitely go check it out because there's probably not going to be another movie like this ever again. I will say that. This movie asserts that a little bit.
I read somewhere that this was Damien Chazelle putting it all on the field. This is like him flipping the birds. Like, this is it, guys. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it.
Definitely. Yeah, it feels like a big swing in that regard, and I appreciate it on that level for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of a mixed bag. Laron, you and I saw this together at a film press screening here in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle. What did you think of the film?
Very similar to Dalton. I went into this very primed to love it, even though I had known that that they had an embargo on the film for literally up to days before it came out, before it released. So I went into a little bit of trepidation, but thinking in my heart of hearts, because I love Damien Chazelle. Whiplash is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. And, I've just felt like, he was, primed to do a great job with this. And I felt like this was La La Land if it had snorted a line of Coke or 2 lines of Coke or a whole bag of Coke. How
about a whole mountain of Coke?
Whole mountain of Scarface. Coke. And I know what he's going for here. And I think that a lot of it, the first 75 minutes for me, I think are spectacular.
Untouchable.
I was in it. I was in love. I was like, this is top 10 level, somewhere right there in the, start of the second act, I guess you would say. It's 3 hours and 8 minutes or so. It just lost me. It never kept up the same energy or the momentum that first part promised. And so even though and everything that they were telling me, I felt like I didn't need a movie to tell me this. I already know these things. Like, he's not saying anything new with this, so that made the interminable length even that much harder to sit through because I didn't feel like I was being nourished intellectually in any way, So by the time we get to the end of that ending, the ending he's referring to, I know what they're going for. It didn't land for me because I'd spent so much time not caring, up to that point. And so I think if I hadn't been so bored in the middle of the film, that I could have bought into that ending a little bit more. I think the performances are great. I think Margot Robbie's going for it. Totally. She's giving it 125%, so.
She's doing a lot with a character that I would argue is not the most nuanced writing, but she shows up and just takes that character to a whole nother extreme.
Yeah. But like I said, the first 75 minutes, fantastic. I think there are moments in there that I just how did they do this? My head was spinning with how the crafts are on display. I love the score. I think the score is a lot of fun. It's really loud and busy. But I did really enjoy the score. I think, like I said, all the craft is on display. I think the story needed some significant trimming.
Totally. That scene where Margot Robbie and her director kind of collaborating, she gets brought in at the last second.
Oh yeah,
I'm on fire for that scene.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. There are moments that this movie really pops. I'm with you.
Without spoiling it, there's basically in the first act of the film, you kind of get a little bit behind the scenes of how the sausage was made with silent films, and it's. And it's back before there were unions and there was regulations, and it was just how do you get the job done as fast as possible, and it leads to some of the most electrifying set pieces I've seen this year by a mile.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Laron, not to reiterate too much what you said, there's a second major party sequence in the movie that's roughly around 70-75 minutes in the movie, and after that, it just goes off in a bunch of different directions. In fact, I would say Brad Pitt doesn't even feel like he's in the same movie as Margot Robbie after they're together at the beginning, and then it branches off, and it never quite comes back together. And thus, whenever after you've been sitting through an hour and a half of like, wait, where's this going? And then they try to like put a very emotional pin in it. It just feels like it wasn't quite earned, even if I think the spirit of what they were trying to say was very present at the beginning.
It's like the cocaine just finally tapered off, and you're now normal again, and you're no longer in that high that the first part of the movie gave you. So yeah, that's how I would describe it. Lots of cocaine references.
Like a lot of coke.
You'll understand when you see it.
We do not endorse the use of cocaine on this podcast.
No, absolutely not.
And Daniel, you had not seen this one yet.
No, it's still a blind spot. I am interested hearing everything I've heard about it now. Damien Chazelle for me, I mean, I love Whiplash a lot. It is one of those movies, the more times I revisit it, the more I question why I love it and what that says about me. But in a good way, I think some good films really do that. And La La Land was one that I initially received very, very, very positively and have grown a little lukewarm on it. And now just hearing what I'm hearing with Babylon, I wonder how it's going to sit with me, because despite what the three of you are ultimately saying, which is still it's positive but negative as well, but I've heard some people who just absolutely love this film, love it to death, and some who are prepared to even put it at their like number one spot. And I know, and it's and that baffles me, but it also intrigues me. So I will see it soon.
Well, I think that's the thing I love about it is, even if I think Dalton kind of outlined this, even if I didn't love the movie, I love that Damien Chazelle was able to make such a big, ambitious movie. It's too bad it's a kind of a mess, but also in a time where I didn't feel like original, like auteur-driven cinema was hanging by a thread, I would probably be like, oh, great, we can discuss it. That's fun. It's just, whenever it feels like there's a lot more on the line, it's a lot more depressing when people don't come out universally loving it. But, last thing I want to say, Margot Robbie's great. Brad Pitt, amazing. And I think only Brad Pitt or another, air quotes, movie star from that generation could play that role the way that it plays. A Leo, maybe Tom Cruise, maybe. No.
Cruise left this performance behind years ago. The Tom Cruise that's in Magnolia could have played that Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Not the Tom Cruise that's in Maverick. No way.
That's true. That's fair. He's fully embraced. I don't even know what you call him. He is a movie star.
Stuntman Cruise.
Yeah.
Biggest stuntman.
Okay, last one I want to acknowledge here is White Noise, the newest film from Noah Baumbach.
Roll film.
That stuff causes cancer in laboratory animals, in case you didn't know.
Either I chew gum or I smoke.
What are these children, yours?
That's mine from Wives 1 and 3. There's Babette's from Husband 2. Wilder is ours. We're each other's fourth.
Now, Dalton, I know you and I saw this in a screening together along with Arthur Gordon. What did you think of this movie?
It's a great commercial for Don DeLillo's novel, and I think that's a success. If you adapt something, what you want is people who are not familiar with your source material to be more interested in it. It definitely worked for me on that level. I'm not a huge Baumbach head. I've only seen Marriage Story, so I don't have like a big frame of reference for him. But I will say, seeing him play in the Spielberg sandbox is really kind of interesting. He's doing a sort of that Spielbergian awe thing a couple of times in a way that's really interesting. A movie that I like in moments, and I think has some scenes that are really exceptional. And I'm a big fan of Part 2, the Airborne Toxic Event. I think that's sort of the strongest section of the film by a large mile. But overall, a mixed bag for me, but a film I liked quite a bit. It was in the top 25 for a little bit. It has been squeezed out, but a film that I like.
Okay. Wow, that's very positive. I have heard a lot of people really hate this movie.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a movie about death anxiety, so it's definitely not for everybody.
No, this is not for everybody. Laron, what was your take on White Noise?
I had a lot of interest in this one because I am a Baumbach head, and I love all of his work, or at least appreciate all of his work. And this is no exception. I think my ambitions might have been a little bit too high for this. His might have been too. But I think that it was a very interesting absurdist comedy. I don't think all of the ideas coalesce in a very cohesive way. They kind of feel disparate from each other. But like individual segments, very similar to Babylon, just really slap. So. It's worth seeing for that. It is a mixed bag, but those moments that do sparkle are very unique. As you mentioned, the airborne toxic event chapter of the story is just insane and weird and colorful and strange and bizarre, but just really fun from a cinematic level. But honestly, I think hands down the most exciting part for me is the end credits.
Oh yeah,
that is one of the best end credit sequences I've seen in I downloaded that song.
Yeah, New Body Room is a bop.
It's so good. I think the Academy should introduce a new award, best ending credits.
Best end credits. I mean, really, so seriously, it's like 7.5 minutes of the cast and crew all in a grocery store. Like it's a musical number. You think it's kind of intimate, and then it gets bigger, then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger. And at some point, you're just like in awe of how much they put into this one moment. And it's like, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the movie at all, but it just makes you feel good, So stay for the end credits.
Daniel Bokemper, did you get around to saying White Noise?
No, it is one I'm going to catch before the end of the year. I am curious. Noah Baumbach is a bit of an anomaly, and again, admittedly, he himself is a fairly big blind spot. I've seen the Ben Stiller film While We're Young.
Yeah, While We're Young.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I like that
and I remember liking it. But other than that, I did not catch Marriage Story. I am curious about this film mostly. I think maybe you're describing it, but I'm not sure. But didn't LCD Sound System produce an original song?
Yeah, that's the end credit song.
Yes.
Yeah,
I will be seeing it for that alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I just want to give a shout out, even though I think I'm closer to you, Dalton. I've gone back and forth. It's another film that I think is appreciated slightly, because when I walked away from the film, I was like, that was an experience. I have no interest in ever watching it again. I do think Greta Gerwig and Adam Driver are nailing it. Totally. They have a very, very hard job in this movie. And even when I don't think the script or the direction always succeeds, they always land their beats really, really well. Yeah. They have to go from like hilarious to pitch black to absurdist all in one scene sometimes.
With Don Cheadle's actually very good in a supporting role as well.
Yes. Yeah. Gotta give a shout to Don Cheadle.
They're great in roles that I think they're too young for too.
Yes.
I think these characters should be in their 50s, and I think the two of them equip themselves very well despite only being barely 40.
Oh yeah,
not even quite.
I think it goes on Netflix Friday. All right, guys, those are just a few of the movies I wanted to quickly acknowledge. Let's stop and talk about 2022 as a year in film. Let's step back. We're going to talk about some. We're going to give out some awards. We're going to pick our top 5. But before we do, I would just love to hear what you guys have thought about this year in film as a whole. Dalton, I'll start with you.
We're on a sinking ship. It's a dire time. I don't know what to tell you, folks.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more, though. Come on.
Look, we're rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic in a pretty big way, and I am worried about movies. Now, if Babylon by Damien Chazelle is any indicator, we've always been worried about movies. Take that with a grain of salt, but I think this is kind of an indicator of where we're at. The shit going on at Warner Brothers and HBO is just
insane.
And it's bananas. I cannot think of another time that a a potentially $1 billion property, a tentpole movie, has been pulled at the 11th hour like this with the Batgirl movie. Absolute just craziness. And then pulling TV shows that
Westworld, a crown jewel of the HBO banner for 5-6 years, and it just gone like that.
Yeah. It's a strange time. I don't know what's going to happen over
Pre-order
there.
those Station 11 Blu-rays coming at you in February.
Seriously. Are they putting Station 11 out on Blu-ray? I might get that.
Yeah, only because everyone was freaking out about it getting pulled off HBO Max.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're at. It is an economy of attention now, and if you don't have the streaming numbers to support your project, your company's probably not going to stand behind you. And I don't know. It's not TV, it's HBO, and you expect them to play ball a little bit differently, but the new management over there is just...
Dave Zaslav does not care.
Nah, he don't give a fuck about movies. He does not at all. He hates us, in fact. Weird times.
Laron Chapman.
Echo that. Yeah, I feel like definitely the state of movies is scary, like what it's going to look like now and what kind of content we're going to get based on this new set of criteria. But that being said, I mean, I consumed a lot of movies this year, enough to make 2 or 3 top 10 lists, and which makes it always more fun to narrow them down, in a unique challenge, So, I mean, as far as the content that I saw a lot of great films, but I am nervous about what 2023 onward looks like for film, and where are they all going to be these tentpole action spectacles? Because the movies that did the best this year were all those things, So people went to the certain movies, and we'll talk about what those are later. But the indie films or the auteur artists, where do those stories live? And
where does non-IP storytelling go?
Which is a significant part of film. It's not just big action spectacles.
The thing that's interesting is we talked about this a lot on our Avatar 1 and Avatar 2 podcast, though. The demand for VFX outweighs what is possible to produce at the quality, even a fraction as good of Avatar. So it's extra scary. Is there's more demand, like all of those resources that would have been going to indie filmmaking is shifting to like these VFX heavy tentpole films, largely superhero films. I mean, it's well documented how overworked and underpaid special VFX houses are. Simultaneously, Kevin Feige gets up on the stage at Comic-Con and says, we're doing more than we've ever done. And it's like, well, what is that going to look like?
Kevin's turning me into Hammond in Jurassic Park. I'm staring at the CCTV and I've got my face in my hands, and I really do hate that man. His stupid hat.
Daniel, I have more to say on this matter, but before you do, maybe you have an array of hope or other thoughts you can bring to us.
There was a lifeline.
I always do. And I will come through with it before I unfortunately agree with everyone. It is a very scary time. I say that, and to Laron's point too, but I watched a lot of high quality films this year. I watched a lot of really great cinema. I do worry, is this like a swan song perhaps? Or, and I mean, into that note, we do have a bit of a theme. I've heard more and more people talk about this is like the year of filmmakers making movies about movies in a very sad, somber way. And I mean, with like the Fabelmans and some pointed that to the Whale, Babylon we just spoke about, could find itself among them as well. And it worries me. But at the same time, we do have some incredible people, again, still making incredible films. Specifically, too, when I want to acknowledge one of the running themes, just great women in their directorial debuts. Specifically, I want to mention Charlotte Wells with After Sun.
Hell yeah, baby.
Chloe Akuno with Watcher. Was great. I thought it was. Yeah. And Domi Shi with Turning Red.
Turning Red has not gotten its due.
No,
I just want to throw it out there.
And it wasn't going to be spoiler alert, not on my top 5. So I must say I need to mention it somewhere. But again, a directorial debut.
Yeah.
For a woman of color.
Exactly.
At a major Disney-owned studio.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Damn Pixar.
And even to add to that list, I don't know, I'm not going to say their names, but Till was an example, one directed by a woman. Causeway was another one directed by a woman. The Woman King, another one directed by a woman. So they had a good year this year, and behind the camera, and they put out quality work, So
yeah, and that's all to say is I think there's something to be hopeful in that, but it worries me. Maybe it was just right place, right time. Time will tell.
One of the success stories of this year was Everything Everywhere All at Once, an A24 produced film that made over $100 million. A24 doesn't, I think the closest they had before that was Hereditary at $80 million. So, I mean, that's not for nothing. And that's a movie that stuck around for weeks, like several weeks, and no IP. I mean, Michelle Yeoh's the star. She's incredible, but she's not a movie star that opens, So there is rays of hope. I agree with everything you guys said. I think we are genuinely in the most uncertain state of filmmaking that we've been in our lifetimes, for sure. Potentially as far back as, Damien Chazelle, back when we got sound in the films. So,
or at least the new Hollywood changeover.
And that was the 70s, right?
60s into the 70s. Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels like we're due for one of those, especially when you have things like Black Adam tanking. This ship's always on fire. They're always spending more money than they have to spend. They're always employing more people than they can afford to employ. So, it'll probably shake out in the wash. We'll see.
Hopefully it shakes out better. That's the real thing.
Yeah, exactly. And Daniel and Ron have both thrown me a lifeline a little bit. I mean, it was a good year for the movies. I've seen worse. There's some good pictures out this year.
Okay, well, we've spent a lot of time talking about movie trends. Let's get to our first round of awards and then on to our number 5 films of the year. Our first special award that we're going to hand out today is the This Could Only Be Made in 2022 award. I don't know what you guys picked, and I'm just going to throw mine out there to kind of demonstrate to listeners what I'm talking about. With this particular award, I'm thinking of a movie that, whether it's thematically, whether it's with the technology, whether it's related to current events and what's going on in pop culture, feels like it's immediately a 2022 movie that probably would never get made pre-2022 and will likely feel slightly dated to a 2022 mindset in retrospect. And that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, by the way. I picked Pearl. Why? It's a double feature with X. I'm pretty sure Ty West was only supposed to make one movie, but he's like, what if we make two? We've got the locations for this much, 2 movies for the price of one. Slightly, I'm sure it was a little more money, but he basically got 2 movies for the price of one. And without spoiling Pearl, you can go listen to our in-depth conversation that we did about that earlier this year. I'll link it in the show notes. It feels like a movie that is so closely tied to how we all felt coming out of the pandemic. Like we're technically, you're still technically in it, but things are a little more relaxed, but we're still kind of like psychologically as a country, as
another movie about
species.
movies.
Yeah,
totally.
It just really feels like a movie that feels of the time. Again, I think it's an amazing film, as I'm sure we'll talk about, but that is my selection for the movie that could only be made in 2022 award. Laron Chapman, what is your selection?
I went back and forth on this because a part of me really wanted to say Jackass Forever. Yes, it's because of that Facebook that we both got tagged in earlier today.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass. 3, 2, 1. A lot of people ask, what will Jackass be like once we're older? Well, it'll get more mature.
It's one of those movies that no one asked for. I didn't know we needed it. And I didn't realize how nostalgic I was going to be watching the 4th Jackass movie. And really just seeing the camaraderie of all these people, and it really transported me back to that. I don't know, was that early 2000s or was it the 90s or was it, am I going back too far? Probably 2000s, early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, I just remember watching those all the time with cousins, and the show itself and then the movies being a whole thing. And it felt weird that they would be bringing one out. It felt kind of, do we need this? I don't think. And then I watched it and I was surprised how moved I was by just seeing that these people are still friends after all these years and they're still up to the same shenanigans.
A shockingly loving environment.
Yeah, yes. Surprisingly. Even all the nut checks to, withstanding. It's like, yes. yeah, there were definitely.
But that's the thing. They're all in it together. Like nobody is immune to getting pranked.
Exactly.
And they've all seen some shit together, some of them multiple times.
Absolutely.
It is really sweet. And such a surprise. Yeah. Also, you'll see things in that movie that you can never unsee.
No, I haven't. They're still right there. And then just very quickly, just because I was going back and forth on this, and also seeing like movies like Bros and Spoiler Alert coming out this year. I was hard pressed to find, if I was even thinking about movies that have mainstream queer characters in it, like in a rom-com, like mainstream movie produced by mainstream studios. And both of those were produced this year, and when I'm going back and thinking, I can't list 10 of them because they don't exist, so they exist on your Netflix or Hallmark shows or so, but ones that went to theaters, you know what I mean?
That character's the best friend.
Yeah. Exactly.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's just very rare to see it. And so I like Spoiler Alert a lot more than Bros, but all the same, I'm just happy that something like that exists, even those middling romantic comedies that exist for heterosexuals, it's nice to see that they're on the other side of this. We have something.
Daniel Bokemper, what was your selection?
Yeah, so I think mine, it's more about, I don't think it's impossible that it could be made at another time. But I think it came out at a particularly good time because I think we just have such a pressure cooker of just feels bad and of just despair and a little bit of fear and overall a lot of maybe feeling a little bit creatively stagnant in some ways too. And I think that we've shoved all that into a pressure cooker, and we've hoped that after many, many, many years, after basically 2 years of this, almost 3, that it'll just, create something that is just delicious and exquisite. And now we finally open up the pressure cooker and it's filled with fart jokes and nut shots, and of course it's Jackass Forever.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to deal with
No, you didn't at all. It's great because I think the other thing we really needed is just a hearty laugh and just to have a little bit of fun. And we get a lot of movies this year. That's the one thing that again brings me hope is we have movies that I'll talk about later that are just fun to go out and see with a group of people. And Jackass Forever is absolutely among them. And I think if any movie, that was the one that I just felt so like relaxed. It felt like, I mean, despite cringing a couple times, I should say that overall relaxed. Yeah. It was just something that was very kind of pleasant and oddly uplifting. And even though it's so mindless, you do not have to think about it very hard to laugh at all.
And yet it's probably going to be my vote for best documentary at the OCC.
Right. It is. It's so
it might be
good. It's compelling in that way, honestly. But yeah, no, I think Jackass Forever is my pick as well.
Dalton, Stuart, what is your selection?
My selection is Matt Reeves' 3-hour epic, The Batman.
Whoa, take it easy, sweetheart. Hear everything they say, ain't you?
Maybe we're not so different. Who are you under there?
I'm vengeance.
No truer indicator of where we're at with IP that Matt Reeves gets to make a 3-hour-long indulgent detective movie out of The Batman. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense that it exists. It doesn't make sense that the third act of that movie is about extremism. But in 2022, it really does. It's fucked up that we have to live under the constant threat of getting shot by some internet psycho. But that's what the end of The Batman's about. Didn't know they would make a Batman movie about that, but they did. Weird stuff. It's very 2022 to me. I also, another sort of this year factor of it is the Colin Farrell of it all, having the best year of his career.
Absolutely.
And just really throwing heat everything he showed up in this year. And
such range. Like
unrecognizable.
He's A+ in every movie. The Batman, Banshees of Inisherin,
After Gang, 13 Lives.
I keep forgetting about that one.
Too.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, he just killed it. Yeah, great pick. Our next award is the They Deserved Much Better Award. And what do I mean by They Deserved So Much Better Award? Could be a director, could be an actor, actress, could be a writer, someone who clearly showed up with their A++ game, but for whatever reason, whether it's the studio intervention, whether it's other collaborators who are terrible, or just other forces, kept this person from having a successful project. Dalton, Stewart, I'll start with you on this one.
Oh, it's got to be the cast and crew of Don't Worry, Darling. I mean, goddamn, there's a good movie in there, you know? It's dumb as a bag of rocks, but it's still fun, you know? There's an interesting movie hiding in there. I've heard it called a really great first draft, and I definitely agree with that. Even with all of that, even if it's the same movie without the media circus around it, I can't help but wonder if this movie doesn't get received a little differently. People are more receptive to it in an ecosystem that isn't, full of all this drama. A movie that I'm interested in, and I think will have legs. I really think that this is going to develop a cult following over the coming years. That's my theory.
I hope you're right. Olivia Wilde's direction here is really, really top notch. I really think the failings come from the script, honestly. Yeah, I think everything else about it, the cinematography, the score, Chris Pine and Florence Pugh in particular, holy cow, so good. It's just the script. It falls apart. It's a mystery box. It turns itself into a mystery box movie for some reason that it didn't need to do. It's weird. Laron Chapman, what is your pick?
Yes, so we've maligned Babylon quite a bit, and you just mentioned Don't Worry, Darling. Those are both on the honorable mentions for this category. But the one I'm going to put on there is Halloween Ends, and I'll say that they deserve better, and that is the audience. We are they. We deserve better. I feel like that franchise, the resurgence of this franchise, started off really strong, and I think that it pumped new life into a decades-old franchise. And very quickly with Halloween Kills teetered off into, the muck. So unfortunately, I think while I think there are things in Halloween Ends that are very interesting thematically, it's still, when you trace back where you started, it leaves a lot to be desired, So I'd say, Halloween Ends and let it end.
That's another one very similar to our last pick, where you're just like, the pieces were there, the ingredients were there, they just didn't put them together in a way that landed the plane in any meaningful way, like just plane crash.
Evil dies tonight, and so does Halloween.
That is going to be the legacy of that trilogy.
Absolutely. I will keep that alive.
Speaking of evil dying tonight, Daniel, what is your pick for the They Deserve So Much Better award?
This was tough because this was almost my most disappointing as well, as far as a single film, but something else came in clutch and beat it out. But it's Alex Garland. I have been so excited. I was so excited for Men, especially coming off of Ex Machina and Annihilation, two of my favorite science fiction films of the last decade, I would say. Just so excited, so much happy, and I like even his television show.
Yeah, Devs
is great as well, and so I just had so much excitement going into Men, and I think the director Alex Garland was there, and that was great, and the few segments of that were phenomenal. But I think this screenplay, the Alex Garland, the writer, may have gotten in the way of himself and may have created something that was a little too convoluted, or maybe it was just a script that wasn't that long to begin with, and he just had to start filling it with things. And unfortunately, if he's going to write his own film, he really needs to be firing on all cylinders. And I think it just felt like it could have been, both a lot shorter and still very compelling. I think if it was just like even a short film in general, I think it could have gotten everything it was attempting to say out in a really smart way. Or if maybe there was just a little bit more time, I don't know, something was missing from the writing, but I felt like the direction was great. And when it clicked for me, it was really there. And I did not, absolutely hate the movie, but I have to say I was a little disappointed in the fact that he was, again, working against himself a little bit there. He almost did himself dirty. So
Jessica Buckley was a top notch.
She was excellent. Yeah, Jessica Buckley
good in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Jesse's killing it. And Rory Kinnear's great too.
Rory Kinnear, yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
The Rory Canussi. What a weird movie. What a weird movie.
Yeah, it's another one. Like that's the thing that's the most heartbreaking about all these is like I feel like the ingredients are all there. There's just the scripting issues. It's really scripting issues is the big thing. Okay, mine's not going to be a specific film. I'm going to say, despite me being really doom and gloom about superhero movies, Henry Cavill deserves so much better award. Why? I mean, he makes, spoiler alert for Black Adam, the movie that's now streaming on HBO Max less than 2 months after it came out in theaters, makes a cameo in which Henry Cavill then 2 days later, after the movie releases, gets on all the social media, I think it was his Instagram originally, and says, I'm back, I'm Superman, I'm going to do thing. He then almost immediately leaves The Witcher on Netflix, which has kind of been the backbone of his career since he left Superman. And then all of a sudden, a week ago, right before the holidays, found out, JK guys, I'm not coming back. James Gunn and I talked, and they want to do a younger Superman. And I don't actually, I'm not going to get into the weeds on it. I don't blame James Gunn because they hired James Gunn to do a thing. And I honestly, as much as I like a lot of the individuals working in the DCEU, the best thing to do at this point is just start from scratch. There's too much nonsense, too many things don't work, too many cooks in the kitchen. I say Henry Cavill was done dirty though, because he was promised by either the studio told him to go out and announce that he was back right before they hired new people to come in and take over. So I think it's terrible studio mismanagement. And then on top of that, the thing that's such a bummer is I always thought Henry Cavill had so much potential. He's got the look, he's got the charisma. He seemed to have a real admiration and respect for the character. And, while I have nice things to say about Man of Steel was not it in terms of scripting and really presenting that character in its fullest version of himself. And we certainly didn't see that in BVS or either one of the Justice League movies. So I was like, all right, we're going to get him paired with a good writer and a good director, and he'll have his chance to shine in the role the way he should have the whole time. But alas, it'll never be.
Consolation prize. Are you not excited about Henry Cavill being a Warhammer 40K Space Marine, Caleb?
I'm curious.
Okay.
I'm glad.
I know it's not the same.
I will say I am really glad that Henry Cavill is double downing on his fandom, who's doesn't seem to be super toxic, but largely into like really nerdy things.
He knows the nerds love him.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, he gets it. Yeah. It's great. Well, that is our first round of special awards. We're going to move on to our first round of top 5 films of the year. We're going to start with our number 5 movie. So, Laron Chapman, what is your number 5 movie of 2022 and why?
Man, I'm embarrassed and also not, to mention that, Top Gun Maverick is my number 5 pick of the year.
What do we have here?
Yeah, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
Whatever.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell.
It fought through all of my cynicism, all of my disdain for Tom Cruise, the person, and it just delivered a blockbuster of a bygone era for me that I haven't seen in quite a while. I haven't been that invested in a movie of that kind in a theater in a long time. And so I remember just viewing that and thinking to myself that it's another one of those movies. I'm not super warm on the original. It wasn't my era, so I've seen it. I think it's fine, and it's one of those movies that just shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have worked the way that it did. And so I remember leaving that theater feeling exhilarated by it, and I don't know if it's a great movie. I just know that it was a good time.
And let's be real. How many films have you seen where they actually train the cast members to fly jets for the movie? Jets that some people spend like a decade plus of their life learning to fly, and yeah, Tom Cruise is just dedicated, and I think it's in the text of the movie. He is dedicated to preserving films and blockbuster popcorn entertainment as they have been for the last 50 years, as long as he can. And he's doing that by putting his life on the line? I don't know. He's doing some really daredevilish stuff that seems kind of insane. Yeah. But also, I applaud Tom Cruise for doing it. Whether or not we like him as a person, man, he is giving it 150% to the stunts.
Man, he's bringing me back because even Mission Impossible, I'm like, God, I gotta see it, man.
Gotta see him jump off that bike.
I gotta see what happens. Does he make it?
I know.
I can't wait to see the new Mission Impossible.
Part 1.
Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Gosh.
Daniel Bokemper, what is your number 5 pick of the year?
Yeah, so my number 5, it's going to go to Bodies, Bodies, Bodies from Helena Rain.
Interesting pick.
I know. I think it's just a ton of fun. I think it also, this is a bit of a, in a way, roundabout way, I was thinking about building this list, and I think this kind of harkens back to my 2018 top 5. My number 1 for that year was an odd one. I think while everyone may have been picking, that may have been the year everyone was picking First Reformed, and then I didn't see it. So I picked 8th Grade by Bo Burnham, and I think part of the,
it's a great movie.
I find my way like clinging to like certain things. I find when I pick films that are my favorite of the year, things can only have one thing going for them really, really good, and they run away with it for me. And I think that way, the way that film observed how Gen Z communicates and the rhetoric, and it did so in an organic way. I think Bodies, Bodies, Bodies hits on that a bit, but it's a little, it's a little funnier, it's a little punchier, and it does to some extent make fun of Gen Z, but not too much. I think when it needs to be serious and when it needs to say something very real, I say that in the final 30 minutes of the film, there is a 4-way standoff, and it is just such a great, powerful scene, so well executed, so well performed from very, very, very young actors. So again, I think that alone, it strikes a similar chord again as 8th Grade. I just think it's a little less real and a hell of a lot more bloody. But again, it's
the youths. It focuses on the youths.
It does. The youngins rise up in this film, and I to their detriment a little bit. But I think it's a joy to watch. And I think it's just kind of the perfect amount of clever. It is almost as clever as my number 4 coming up.
Well, it's really cool too. In a year where we have seen a ton of whodunits, I'm sure we're going to talk about more of those here in a little bit. But that one really found a way to carve out its own path. Mm-hmm. It's still a whodunit, but it's not like any other whodunit that came out this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a whodunit that you didn't know was a whodunit.
Exactly. and then, well, I don't want to spoil it, but then it turns out who did it, man, it's wild.
Who done the did?
It's crazy who did it.
Done it.
Dalton Stewart, what is your number 5 pick?
Caleb, my number 5 pick. Daniel just said some things that really spoke to me just now. I have 5-star movies on my top 25 that have been squeezed out by this film. That's a 4.5 for me. But I can't shake this movie. It's the comedy of the year for me. It's Todd Field's Tar.
If you're here, then you already know who she is. Lydia Tarr is many things. As As a conductor, Tar began her career with the Cleveland Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, until she had last arrived here at our own New York Philharmonic. In 2013, Berlin elected Tar as its principal conductor, and she's remained there ever since. Lydia Tarr has also written music for the stage and screen. She is one of only 15 EGOTs, meaning those who have won all 4 major entertainment awards. Thank you for joining us, Maestro.
Thank you.
my girl Lydia, the bastard of classical music herself. Oh God, I love this fucking movie.
You call it a comedy, Dalton. The ending of that movie was probably the hardest I have laughed at the movies this year. In a theater where there was
funny movie.
It's amazing. Great, yeah, great. Kate Blanchett though just kills it, man.
Just I've heard her compared to like sports greats in this movie. It just as far as like she's in her mode, she's in the pocket, and I have to agree with that. She's just absolutely doing it. Even people who don't like this movie like her performance, and I think that speaks to like the work that she's doing. I have a friend that compared it to drinking straight gin, and I think that's and he did not like the movie, to be fair, but I think that's an accurate assessment. It is not for everybody. It is an acquired taste. It's a very specific movie. It has got a vibe that it's asking you to give yourself over to. If you can do that, I think it's a really rewarding film with a lot there. But it's also a little long in the tooth. So I'll throw that out there as a caveat. It probably could have shaved 10 to 15 minutes off. And that's kind of why I've been resistant. But there's so many movies that were almost the 5. And it just had to be Tar. I can't stop thinking about it. It's this interesting exploration of power and misconduct and lies and just self-invention and who we tell ourselves that we are versus who we really are, and like how those two narratives often end up at odds with each other. I just think it's a really powerful film, and I think it's hilarious. I think it's really funny.
It is a really funny movie.
Apartment for Sale. Come on. See, it's a good movie. It's a funny movie.
I think that's a top-notch pick, and I want to reiterate, Dalton, picking 5 movies is really hard.
It's tough.
Picking 10 movies is hard.
Yeah,
but 5 especially. Yeah,
it's tough. I think Tar is a great pick. I really wanted to put this movie on there, and because the other thing I think it does really well, as you highlighted, I want to be very careful how I frame this, because this movie is not about cancel culture, but it is presenting sort of the, what would you call the experience of a person of just the top of the game. Everyone respects the hell out of them. Due to their own that person's own actions, people realize, oh, this person's actually not the best person. Seeing how the film explores that, but from her perspective, it's not taking a stance. It's more just having a character study.
I think it's been called the cancel culture movie because we don't have the language to really get into what the movie is doing. And I think that's to the film's credit. I think that's the film's strength, is that it exists in this gray area that we struggle to articulate because we have these buzzwords that we cling to that are like a good shorthand for explaining things that have happened. And I think it's a good shorthand for explaining what happens in the movie. She's a composer who self-destructs and is canceled. And I think that's a good selling point for the movie.
It observes, cancel culture from her point of view. And that's why we're so insulated from, is it about cancel culture? Kind of because everything's happening in the background. And that's because how she's seeing it, because she doesn't see herself. She knows that that eyes are on her and that people are scrutinizing every detail of what she does because of certain things that come out in the film. I think that was a really brilliant approach to it too, because what it does is it doesn't make it a cancel culture movie. It makes it very broad, and we can have a really meaty conversation about all of those things: power struggle, power structure, ego, narcissism, fame, narcissism.
The canon, what we decide is important as far as art goes.
Absolutely. You mentioned how she presents herself versus who she really is, and all that's just really, really
also
really,
how
really
that she's in denial about there's a reckoning occurring around her, and in most of the movie is her coming to terms with the fact that there's a reckoning happening
to her, and why, and coming to terms with what that is.
Great pick, Dalton. I'm really glad. I don't know if it falls on anyone else's list here, but I'm really glad it made it in the conversation.
I had to talk about it.
Yeah, it's great. So number 5 was actually a really tough one for me in terms of going through my list of what do I put at number 5, and After going through several iterations of my list, which one do I think had the biggest impact initially? Which one's the most rewatchable? Which one do I think has the most value for us right now? And to my surprise, I originally thought this might not even make my top 10. Number 5, The Menu, is my number 5 film of the year.
Go. Good evening. Welcome to Hawthorne. It'll be our pleasure to feed you.
Tonight will be magical.
Over the next few hours, you will ingest fat, salt, protein, and at times entire ecosystems.
We're eating the ocean. We're eating the ocean.
Are you crying?
It's just I find it all very moving.
So it's okay that I'm not as into this as you are. Oh my God.
You shouldn't be here tonight.
This movie is brilliant. It is from many of the folks who work on the HBO show Succession, which is an amazing show. I love it. But they bring a lot of those dark comedy, social critique sensibilities, and they apply it to, they sort of dress it as fine dining culture. But it's really about, it could be about the movies. It could be about music. It just is really examining how the relationships we have with art, and also what our obsession with art, whether as a creator or as a fan or a critic, how we all sort of contribute to the dehumanization of the artist in the process. And
we are all Nicholas Hoult, by the way.
Yeah, at this table, it's great.
Oh yeah, the whole time I was watching The Menu.
I'm him.
Yeah, yep.
I think, Dalton, you mentioned this in your Letterboxd review, and I think it's a great way to put it. Tonal surfing. As in, you'll go from darkly bleak to hilarious at a snap, in a moment. And then there's moments where you don't know how you're supposed to feel until the scene's over. And then you're like, oh, that's really funny. Or, oh no, this is awful. I feel terrible. But the last thing I will say about it, outside of the fact that I just think it's hilarious. I think Ralph Fiennes turns in an awesome performance. And again, I think it has a lot of layers to it and a lot of different ways to read it, which I think is going to add tremendous rewatchability. At least my take on the movie is it's okay to just enjoy the simplicity of going to the movies and having fun. You know, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil it too much, but the movie sort of kind of lands on, there's all of these things happening. Whatever happened to, remember the core of the thing we used to do. Yeah. Does that even matter anymore?
Before we became all self-important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that is my number 5 pick, The Menu. Absolutely love it. And I can't wait for more people to see it. That'll take us to our special award for this round, our first special award for this round. And actually, Dalton was the one who suggested this pair of awards that we're going to go through. The first one is
yes, my little nod, my little nod to Filmspotting SVU, the long deceased now podcast that I liked quite a bit.
I if Matt, it's Matt Singer and Allison Wilmore, right?
Yep.
Yeah, if they're listening, I hope they enjoy the nod. The first one is the movie I didn't get award. So the movie that probably received a lot of critical acclaim or positive buzz, or people were talking about that you watched and you just it didn't click with you in a certain way. So Dalton, since you brought this, introduced this award to the category today, what was your pick here?
I'm so sorry, Laron. I don't get it. I don't get Top Gun Maverick.
That's fine.
I don't get it.
That's fine.
I wish I did. People seem to have so much fun with this movie. I want to be there. I want to be in the danger zone with all of you. I'm Saul Tenser in Crimes of the Future. It's okay if you like escapist propaganda. That's where I'm at with it. I can't get over it. It's a big Navy commercial, and that just makes me mad. I know when I'm being pandered to, and I mean this is why I was mad at Babylon. I don't like it. Movies are manipulative, and I think saying a movie's manipulative is a bad critique. I think that's what their job is. That's how they operate. But if that manipulation is not operating at the appropriate wavelength, it just can really turn me off. And I feel like this is don't you want to have fun? I'm like, yeah, okay. You threw the rule book out. It's cool. I get it. I just can't connect with it. And again, this is a movie much like Babylon that I'm primed for. I've got daddy issues as many folks do, and the dead dad shit should be a lock for me. And I like Miles Teller. We had paid lip service to Whiplash earlier when we were talking about Babylon. I'm also a fan of that film, and I like his performance in that. Doesn't connect for me as Bradley Rooster Bradshaw. I don't buy it. I don't buy that he's mad at Tom Cruise.
The goatee didn't sell it for you?
The mustache, you mean?
The mustache, yeah.
Yeah, what a mustache. No, and neither did his blonde dye job. And neither did Jennifer Connelly, who is like a screenwriter's invention of a hot single mom. She owns a bar. She sailed. Yeah, okay, we get it.
She has a motorcycle.
Oh, God, that's right. Anyway, I see the appeal. I definitely do. But it didn't connect with me. They did not land the plane, as it were. That said, if I'd seen it in IMAX, probably a different story. So who knows?
There really is something to how you watch and engage with the film the first time that makes a big difference. And
Sure.
I'm sure Avatar is going to come up at some point in this conversation today, but I do think it makes a difference. How you watch a movie does oftentimes shape your impression initially. So it's a good call out. But also, Dalton, I will say Top Gun did not make my top 10. It was close, but I will say I have a hard time bringing myself to watch that movie at home because I know it is not going to be nearly as much fun.
I'm curious if you do end up, giving it the at-home watch, what you end up thinking about it.
It's on Paramount Plus now. I'm thinking about it. All right, Daniel Bokemper.
This is one I want to mention I did not get initially, and then it clicked for me upon a rewatch. But at first, I kind of really disliked it, and because I was going into it with so much excitement. And it's Jordan Peele's Nope. At first, I felt like it was just missing something inherent. Like I wanted something out of it that I don't know if I initially got. Maybe I was just having a bad morning. It was when I saw really early. And I think I don't know why, but when I watched it initially, it just didn't quite connect with me. But I'm happy to say I've actually performed an about face. After seeing it a second time, for whatever reason, it started to just make a little more sense, especially the shots. I started just paying attention to a lot more different things. I stopped fixating and I stopped criticizing certain characters for what I felt was very, for being overly simple. And I feel like it suddenly it all meshed a lot better. It all felt a lot better.
Do you think Jordan Peele, given his reputation in his past few films, do you think that also kind of colored your expectations the first time?
I think so, a little bit. I think part of it was just me being I wasn't prepared to have to chew on it very much to know if I liked it. I think with Us and Get Out, I really enjoyed those films just immediately, and that was enough. And I think with this one, it asked me to give it a second. Like it felt like it compelled me to give it a second chance because I just felt like there's something wrong here. Like when I was leaving, I'm like, why do I not enjoy this film as much as I thought I would? And I was like, maybe it was just disappointment. But then, after it gestated, after seeing it again, now I think, and this isn't a knock on Us, but I think I like it better than Us. I think it's one of his greater films. And again, I think it's just Jordan Peele reiteration that on name recognition alone, he's going to get people to show up to the movie theater. I do not know what the box office pool was for Nope, but
it did pretty well.
It did pretty good.
Well. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
They wanted it to do better, but it did good.
And it had a bigger budget than his last two films, so the bar was raised. But it did, from a non-IP studio film that's technically some people are qualifying as a horror, it did well.
Yeah. But yeah, so Nope. Didn't get it at first, but I do now, thankfully.
All right, so Daniel came around. Laron Chapman.
Very happy to hear that, Dan.
We
did that podcast together.
I was going to say, Laron heard my initially kind of negative comments about it.
That's all right. I went back and forth on this because in both of the movies I was oscillating between are about real life people. One of them was Blonde, and the other one, but that one was pretty much universally maligned. So, but the one I'll say that was I feel like pretty praised was Elvis. I think Austin Butler is great in the movie. I really think that he deserves all the accolades he's getting. He is, again, the most compelling part of it. And I am a Baz Luhrmann. I mean, Moulin Rouge is one of my top 10 favorite movies, so and I grew up in the 90s, so the Romeo and Juliet version with Leo was a big deal to me. But there was just something about this one. It's maximalist to the highest order. And normally with him, I expect that, but for this, it felt like it really could have used a little bit of rein in because they're the parts that I found the most compelling. We don't spend much time with, and then we're shuffling between just manic editing and all this stuff, and it all looks cool, but for 3 hours, and it's 3 hours long, or 2 hours and 40 minutes.
It's a long movie.
It's a long movie. That's a long time to be that stimulated. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So. Somewhere about the midway point, I checked out and no longer emotionally invested in the story. I don't think it's a bad film. I think I gave it 3 stars. So it's just one that I know that is getting a lot of praise for all the crafts on it, and I'm not as hyped on that train.
It's a long time to endure that Tom Hanks performance, whatever that is.
I love Tom Hanks, but I couldn't get behind the Colonel, the weird voice and the weird makeup. He doesn't act like any of the other characters in the movie, so he feels divorced from it. It doesn't work for me.
I did like that they framed the whole movie as like a crazy fever dream he was having on his deathbed, the Tom Hanks character. That kind of made all the zaniness a little more passable. Yeah, I was with you on that one, Laron. It's crazy that movie's getting talked about for like Oscar buzz, at least for Austin Butler, and I'm like, really?
Yeah. Best picture, director, screenplay, editing. Yeah.
Big year for 3-hour-long movies.
Yeah.
So many 3-hour-long movies. It's too many. Way too many. That said, almost all my top 5 movies are too long. It brings me no pleasure to say that the movie I didn't get was Bones and All from Luca Guadagnino. It was all right. I didn't hate it. Like, it was cool. It vibed with me kind of like the first part of Suspiria before it got all crazy supernatural. It had little bits of Call Me By Your Name in there with the romantic vibe. I don't know what it is, guys. Maybe it's the cannibalism. I couldn't.
You weren't into the cannibalism.
Come on, Caleb.
I know. I
Open
tried.
your mind.
I love the score. I love Chalamet. Mark Rylance shows up doing something.
Yeah,
I have to give him kudos for at least being memorable. But,
love that performance.
It's a movie. I'm glad Luca Guadagnino continues to make movies. This is just one of, I think, the last few that just really didn't work for me as well as the others. And I think some of it was probably my expectations because I'd seen it after early buzz had come out. I was like, all right, yeah, I loved the last 4 movies he's done. It was all right. Not bad. Worth your time if you're a fan of previous films or horror. I mean, one could argue it's even doing some things with vampire lore that's potentially interesting if you're into that sort of thing. Even though it's cannibalism, there's some overlap there. But not my favorite. We're going to flip it. The movie that they didn't get. The movie that you, Dalton, Laron, Daniel, loved or really admired that everyone else seemed to either overlook, pan, rip a new one. Laron Chapman.
A movie that a lot of people didn't get, was already been mentioned already, is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I find so many people who hate that movie, like vehemently hate that movie because of the ending. And I think the ending's brilliant, but and I can see if you go into it with certain, I won't spoil the ending, of course, but if you go into it with the expectation of seeing a certain movie, it very much is not that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the movie that they advertised, but that for me was what made me excited about it because it didn't go where I expected it to go. And it wound up just being a social commentary on Gen Z culture. And I found that to be far more fascinating than a by the numbers whodunit, where, it's obvious who the person is, so that surprised me. It made it more socially relevant and impactful for me, that it actually was saying something about Gen Z culture. And so that's one that for at least in my circles where a lot of people just didn't get it or didn't care for it. And I was pretty warm on it. So.
Well, they're all wrong, Laron.
Thank you so much.
It's a great move.
You're wrong.
Daniel Bokemper.
Yeah, so this one wasn't like universally panned or anything, and it's a film I love, but there was a loud enough contingent that felt this film was like grossly inappropriate, and I know why, but the reason why is just stupid. Which again, I mentioned it earlier. Turning Red.
May, breakfast is ready. Coming. It's gonna be me. Is everything okay? I'm a gross red monster. Oh, look at me. Stay back.
This happened already?
What did you say?
Our ancestors had a mystical connection with red pandas.
Are you kidding me?
This little quirk runs in our family.
There was again, it's a film about something that, especially young women have to approach at one point in their life. And I think it did so in a way with tact and in a way that dispels feeling ashamed of it. Yet still there are a lot of parents, I've read so many just Facebook posts about being so upset that suddenly they had to explain to their young child what a like period was or something like that.
Get normal.
Like, right,
Get
exactly.
normal, parent.
Get real, for real.
Have you lived in the real world?
No, yeah.
Human biology.
Nah, these motherfuckers don't live in the real world.
No,
That's the problem.
That's true.
They don't, and then they just want to oppress it, and then just have some weird, awkward, like that's the thing. It's like you're injecting shame where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be. And I heard enough. And again, I want to say I don't think when I say like they didn't get, I don't think like. I hope this is a small contingent that's just very, very loud and mostly just Karens.
Critically, it was very well received.
Yes, but critically it was very well received. So, but I do think that it's baffling that in 2022 we still have like people freaking out about just human sexuality, very basic human sexuality that we all have to approach.
Well, Daniel, that's because a lot of people are just genuinely not used to having a woman tell them a story.
Yes.
That is not about men tropes anyway. That's a whole other thing.
Right. No, I mean, you make a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, cinema is like male centric in a really serious way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just, I mean, and Dalton, I think I can't remember which one of our podcasts, at one point this year you had said, and I think it's true, cinema, despite what the conservative movement wants us to think, Hollywood has actually gotten very sexless in the last decade.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's really, it's been desexualized quite a bit. So the fact that like even things like a period make for awkward conversations just tells you a lot more about sort of the state of like the family unit.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bummer. Dalton, Stuart, what movie didn't they get?
Well, by they, I mean the dude behind me who said that's the worst movie I've ever seen. He's wrong, and it's the second best thing called God's Country from this year. Obviously, there's another very cool thing called God's Country. You should listen to that. But this movie starring Thandie Way Newton kicks ass. It rips. It is a revisionist Western that goes so hard. I love this movie. I think it's so cool. It's got all the stuff you want out of the Western, but it's all repackaged and recontextualized and rethought through with the new context. It's just so interesting. It's a character who is so reserved and a performance that's like so quiet and yet like has so many levels. She's really doing a lot in this movie, and her supporting cast is like really well equipped too. She's got a lot of great scene partners in this film, but it really is a showcase for her talents. It definitely feels like the movie that Westworld paid for in a lot of ways.
Thank you,
Westworld. Thank you, Westworld, for giving us this Thandie Way Newton performance, that this showcase that she's deserved for years.
It's really brought her back in the forefront of the conversation, Thandie Newton. She is amazing, just in general. I didn't get to see God's Country. It is very high on my list.
It's a fun movie. Yeah, I think it's really cool. It's definitely playing with Western tropes, but it's doing so in ways that I thought were really unique and interesting.
Well, making her the forefront of a story of a Western where she's, really in full command, even though we're not quite sure how vulnerable or how equipped she is for the threat that's imposing. I thought she was fantastic in that, and that was one also. I think it's not on my top 10 list, but it's one that I was very warm on for sure.
Yeah, top 25 for me. It stayed in that list despite some intense competition. Like we said, this has been a good year for movies.
I'm gonna pick two movies because no one talked about them. They didn't get it because they didn't
show those movies some love.
I can't remember if I haven't said this on air. I'm just gonna reiterate. This was a great year for animation in general. Turning Red's a great example. There's some other movies we're going to talk about that are a great example. Two movies that I loved that came out very, very early this year, and I think one of them was an anime that got dropped in theaters called Bell from Mamoru Hosoda, an anime director I quite like a lot. It's sort of a follow-up, spiritual successor to the film he did a few years back called Summer Wars, and the way he does it is really interesting. He's exploring internet culture from it's very easy when we think about the internet to think toxic fandoms and how awful the internet has, one could argue destroyed pinnacles of our society and actually harmed our ability to communicate. Well, this movie comes in and says, let's focus on the positive. Let's talk about, let's tell an anime Beauty and the Beast style love story about how the internet has actually brought people together and helped us form communities that lift each other up, lift the individuals in those communities up to overcome the challenges in their life. And I found that to be really, really sweet and endearing. And again, I'm the first one to be really hard on the internet in general, specifically social media, but I did find the movie to be a really powerful love story, and not love in the romantic way. it makes you think it's going to be a romantic love story, but it's not. It's I think quite a bit more interesting and complex than that. The other one I want to note, also a great year for stop motion animation specifically. This is not my pick, but Mad God, Pinocchio, the one I'm going to shout out because no one talked about it. It's an anthology on Netflix called The House, which is 3 different vignettes set in a house. The stories are all seemingly unrelated, but the architecture of the house is the same.
I started this and didn't finish it.
It's a slow burn.
Is it good?
I like it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I think certain of the vignettes are a lot better than the others. I think the first one is the strongest one. But man, there's the second one where you're dealing with, well, I won't tell you what you're doing, but it gets under your skin. Ooh,
Okay.
Creepy crawlies, man. Ooh, and stop motion. Again, I just think the way it utilizes stop motion animation is really innovative. And honestly, I've said this on our Pinocchio review, anytime someone shows up with stop motion, I automatically give them a leg up just because there's so few films that do it well, do it at all, or do it well, especially. So I want to recommend both of those. All right, this brings us to our top 5 films of 2022, round 2. Laron Chapman, what is your number 4 movie and why?
My number 4 movie is Nope.
What's a bad miracle? They got a word for that.
Yeah, nah.
We've already discussed it on the podcast already, but this is one that I've seen 3 times in theaters and once at home, and very similar to what Daniel said earlier, I do like it more than Us, and I like it more than Us because as I've revisited Us has fallen apart for me as a story. I think that everything that's going on in it is great. I just think that there are a lot of plot holes in Us that just don't hold up on repeated viewings. Whereas Nope kind of feels like that when I watch it the first time, but it rewarded, repeated viewings, where things started to click more for me. I liked it more and more the more I saw it. I think it's Peele's most ambitious movie. I think as a straightforward story, Get Out is my favorite of his movies, and I think it always will be. I can say confidently that this is his second best film, or maybe his most technically great film. And there's scenes in this movie that I think are indelible now and will become iconic things that get memed and referenced, several times. The bleeding house, the screams of the people being consumed by the entity in the sky. There's just so many, and the final third act of that movie is just bananas, so there are set pieces in it that I thought were as great as any movie I've seen, so that'd be my number 4 pick. Jordan Peele's Nope.
My favorite moment, there's a lot of there's a lot of A+ moments, but as the title would hint, one of my favorites that was both terrifying and hilarious is when it gets dead quiet and he's in the truck, Daniel Kaluuya, and then he's like, is it safe? And he opens the thing up and looks up.
And there's the thing.
And there's things like, nope.
Nope.
And I know that's like the line, but it's so perfect. It's funny, it's scary, it's mysterious, it's everything. There's so many moments like that throughout the film.
He gets genre really well, and it's really strange because I feel like some of the best horror is my favorite genre. That just because I think it's the hardest to accomplish well. You know what I mean? So when it's done well, I really appreciate all the craft that went into it.
Well, Laron. Wait, Nope is not a horror movie, don't you?
Oh, wait.
Know?
Well.
Sorry, I had to play that card. Yes. I'm joking. I'm kidding.
He did pull that on us. Because Get Out's a social satire, whatever that is. It's like,
well, and also the movement of people on the internet who keep insisting things that don't follow very specific conventions of horror are not horror movies.
Yeah, absolutely. But he gets it, and it's weird because I feel like some of the best genre films that have come out of the last 10 years have been from oddly from comedians and Quiet Place, the first 2. Was it what's his name? Krasinski?
Mm-hmm. John Krasinski.
Yeah. You wouldn't think that, Get Out would be such a influential movie of the moment. And when I saw it, I knew it was great, but as I'm thinking about it, like it's had an influence, it's kind of, affected the genre in a way. And so, and it's just great to see, again, always to see representation, seeing, Black and queer characters, because she, Keke Palmer's character, it's not overtly mentioned, but, being in the forefront and having, a story like this that, again, is not focusing on that element of it. They just exist in this universe. It was just great to see. So,
and not to mention Keke Palmer
she's great.
Incredible.
Yeah, she's great in it.
Yeah. Movie. Yeah. Man, that's a great pick. Laron, my appreciation for that movie has only grown since we talked about it. So great pick. Dalton, Stuart, what is your number 4 film?
My number 4 film is the film that did successfully play to my daddy issues because it's fucking on site for the Sackler family, baby. It's All the Beauty and the Bloodshed by Laura Poitras, the documentary about the life of photographer and activist Nan Goldin. What a film. It simultaneously charts Nan Goldin's childhood and adolescence and career while also showing a portrait of her modern day work trying to get the Sackler family name removed from museums throughout the world. Really kind of came out of nowhere, knocked some other stuff I really loved out of the top 5 consideration, out of the top 25. It was one of the last films that I caught up with this year, but really am in digging this doc, and I can't more strongly recommend it. I think it's really powerful. And I don't know, the opioid epidemic continues unabated. Just because the Purdue Pharma was, dissolved for all intents and purposes doesn't mean that things are going to get better. And I think the work that Nan Goldin is doing deserves a spotlight. And, I was not familiar with her work as a photographer either. And so getting this film, not only to see like the work she's doing as an activist, but getting to experience her work as a photographer through the montage work that this film does is really exciting for me, just to get exposure to an artist I'm not familiar with. Can't more strongly recommend this film. I think it's going cold. I don't want to go give you too much because I think watching it unfold is really interesting and really powerful. But just suffice to say that Nan Goldin's a real one. Just a cool person with a really interesting story and a really interesting life. And, we're lucky to have her on this planet.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's, for listeners, if you didn't catch it the first time, that's All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. Right?
All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. Yes. Thank you, Caleb.
Excellent. Daniel Bokemper, what is your pick for number 4?
Yeah, so a little theme of mine continues as I alluded to in my 5th pick. My number 4 is Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery from Rian Johnson.
Crew, we've arrived. Disruptors have assembled.
Welcome, gang. We got a great weekend.
Who's that?
Benoit Blanc, the detective?
Mr. Blanc, I cannot overstate my gratitude to be here. When's the murder mystery start?
I am very, very happy this series is still all right. Like, I was so worried it was just going to crash and burn horribly. And there is crashing and there is burning in this film, but
there sure is.
It's
disruption.
Not, it's not a disruption. Yes. We are the reclamation of the disruptors. It's just so, it's still just so funny and it still speaks to it. I will say, like, and we talk about this in pretty great detail on the podcast we did for Knives Out, Glass Onion, but also in my review of Glass Onion itself, also on the Cinematropolis.com. But I will say it keeps what Knives Out did right without feeling completely rehashed. It still was new. And as of right now, I'm think this series definitely has legs to go. I think we also get a little bit more of what I felt was very compelling of Knives Out, which is Benoit Blanc, Daniel Craig's character. But then you also have some just absolute heavy hitters in the form of Janelle Monáe, and also Kate Hudson, just like
out of nowhere, the
show.
dark horse. Kate Hudson,
yes. So her birdie, just like what is reality even, or whatever she says. It's just such a good delivery. But I also think it's the other thing is it kind of pushes away some cliches of the man of mystery especially with Benoit Blanc. I mean, he's not, I know Daniel Craig portrayed 007, but I feel like Benoit Blanc is such a perfect antithesis, but still very compelling in that he's not a womanizer and he doesn't use violence to solve everything. He, in fact, is just using his mind, and he knows who the actual heroes of the story are and when they deserve to take action. And I think that's so cool that they preserved that, but we still get a little bit more of him. We still get it. Yeah. Now, that all being said, I would probably say the original Knives Out. I think I like it better.
It's a little tighter.
But yes, but that's not saying, because again, if we were talking about 2019, that film would probably rank for me even higher than this one is right now. So again, still very, very, very strong showing. And I'm very excited. There are a few weird things, and the amount of money that's being hurled at this franchise gets a little scary. Especially when this film is one that is in part a dissection of wealth, but
okay,
I think it's still,
not only is it a dissection of wealth, it is a movie that is knocking air quotes disruptors that is produced by Netflix.
Yes.
The ultimate entertainment, the film industry disruptor.
Exactly. That is admittedly, I think it was Joe Light who was on the Glass Onion podcast, who she was not a fan of Glass Onion, but she brought that up. And I have to say, yes, it does make my appreciation for this film a little gross, but I still think it's very great and compelling. And again, I think it can. I do hope it moves away from just talking about the rich and maybe looking at, or if it does, looking at it in a bit different light, because now we have two entries that are about wealthy. That happens to be a good, I think, catalyst to have somebody with a tremendous amount of wealth that a lot of people lean on.
Sure.
That makes a good catalyst for whodunit, I think, and gives people a lot of motives.
Well, I think one thing I was reading after I watched this one a second time, the first film is dealing with old money, whereas this film is dealing with new money, tech industry, billionaires.
New money and exponentially more money. Like in a part of ways, Harlan, Christopher Plummer's character in the first one, he's more subdued. He could actually be wealthier, but he doesn't want to taint his art. Or let it, be adapted into whatever. And whereas this, it's just somebody who really didn't earn their wealth going bananas with it. And again, it's just so good and just a lot of fun. Another great film to just see with a crowd and just react to.
That is a movie that is the biggest bummer of this movie being sent to Netflix, is it plays with a crowd. Like it's incredible.
So good, and it was barely in the movie theaters. Like it was such a limited time.
I made a point to go to see it in theaters for that one reason.
It was only released in 600 theaters, and yet was the number 3 movie that, despite being in a fraction of number of theaters as Black Panther.
Which is a weird model, you would think if it's going to make money,
they're leaving a lot of money on the table.
The first one made money. Like, why would you think this one?
And the first one had huge legs between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Like I honestly think it would have been like a top 3 movie every weekend until Avatar came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of plays to what Caleb mentioned earlier about Prey and
Hellraiser.
Prey and Hellraiser, like how successful those films probably would have been if they just sat there. But no, send them to streaming.
Great pick, Daniel. I think we might be hearing more about that one here in a moment. But first, my number 4 movie is a little movie I like to call simply 3 letters. It is simply RRR.
आखिर उन्होंने फैसला किया कि वो अपने दोस्त को बचा कर ही रहेंगे।
Caleb, as the Na'vi say, I see you.
I see you.
This movie, oh my God. Whenever I heard the buzz about it, I didn't believe it. Rise, Roar, Revolt, RRR, is probably the most exciting blockbuster I have seen in years. It's not based on anything except for, Indian, cultural icons, right? It's their superheroes, but it's not making them. They are superheroes, but it's like an origin story about real things they dealt with: oppression, racism, imperialism, colonialism. There's a romance tied in here, and simultaneously, there's a scene where a truck crashes and a bunch of tigers all fly out of the cages at the same time to attack the snooty British people while their building's on fire. It's incredible.
Yeah.
This movie is a ride. I'm teasing. I'm spoiling a future answer, but it's a movie that I so wish I could have seen with a full crowd in a theater so badly, because I watched it on Netflix with my fiance Lauren, and we were laughing the whole time. It's a 3-hour movie, despite the fact that I feel like most 3-hour movies have been too long this year. This is one that moved. I was never bored.
I was never bored. Never feels like 3 hours.
It feels fresh, but it's still a blockbuster. It's inspiring our imaginations. It's creating heroes that stand for morals and ethics, and they're fighting oppression, fighting for the people. It's just a awesome movie. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a cult hit. I do think I am hopeful that it replays in theaters in future years.
They're actually campaigning too, so it's really nice to see the cast members campaigning for the film. So there is it's a tough crowd, but I mean, like, there's an opportunity for this to be in the Oscars race, like in a couple of categories, at least 3, including Best Picture as like
10 nominations, people. If there's a spot, if there's an empty nomination and RRR is not in there, I am going to be upset.
That would be a very happy day.
Rajmouli getting the director nod would be huge.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Really cool.
Director is one of them. Yeah, so.
So that's my pick, RRR. It's on Netflix right now. I implore you. I know it's 3 hours, and you're like, "Whoa, that's a big commitment." You won't feel it. Get a bunch of friends together and watch it in your living room on TV. It is such a crowd movie. It's
and at the end, you'll know not to. Yeah, and that's truly the greatest gift the movie can give you.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. What a brilliant movie. What a surprise. I love the surprise of RRR. So that is my number 4 movie of
squeezed
the year.
out for me, Caleb. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you highlight it.
Yes.
Awesome. Well,
you put it so high on your list. That's true bravery.
I go back to one of the big things that sort of in my own little rubric is like just the experience of it and rewatchability and the impact. And I feel like those 3 areas, like it's kind of like it's a totally different movie than Cloud Atlas, a movie I really liked from 2012. That's another 3-hour movie that I feel like I can just pop on and I don't feel the runtime at all. So that is my number 4 movie. This round, we have 2 special awards we're going to hand out. The first one is the Dom Toretto Movie You're Most Likely to Watch Recommend to Your Family Award, named after, of course, the family man himself, Dom Toretto. Laron Chapman, what is your pick?
I actually picked Glass Onion for this because I really do feel like it has a broad appeal where, I mean, you can show it to your grandmother, you could show it to a teenager, you can show it to... Generationally, there's just a lot going on here. Kate Hudson's character can be the millennial, millennial age. I think, I feel like that's one that Dad could like, Grandpa could like, and it's just a good time. I went into it with high expectations and left still pretty pleased with it. So, again, Janelle Monáe, got to shout out Kate Hudson. The surprise hit was Kate Hudson. I knew from the trailer she was giving something, but she's a despicable person, but she's very hilarious to watch and witness. So, and it's a tough feat because Knives Out was kind of a surprise hit. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was going to be, and so there was a lot of hype around and a lot of expectation around this sequel. And so for it to have hit as hard as it did, I still prefer the first one, but I think that it's still such a good time that, I think that's one that anyone can enjoy.
It is definitely, I think, generally a great family pleaser. It was the movie I wanted to take my family to see at Thanksgiving, but it was not playing in the theater where we were at the time. Daniel Bokemper. Dom Toretto, what award would you give out on his behalf?
So I'm really split. It honestly comes down to 2. One a bit more personal, and another that is actually like proven to some extent for me. So the one I want to mention that is not ultimately my pick, but I think it's worth mentioning is The Fabelmans. I think both the combination of the family structure, my mom being a musician herself, and then but always being at the junior high choir director level. Not that she hasn't gotten to do bigger things, but I think there's this I can feel that connection of wanting to do more, and maybe perhaps her really resonating with Michelle Williams' character in a lot of ways. But then my dad just loving John Ford, and God, that just pays off so well. And
incredible
I think,
cameo.
Yes. And we it's not the last you hear of it, but I do want to mention that I think he would connect with, but I think ultimately for Father's Day, I took my dad to see Top Gun Maverick, and I think that might be one of the best like Lego sequels I've seen, just because it has that. It's really that what I think Lego sequels are designed to, or legacy sequels are designed to do, is that kind of multi-generational fun. And I think we both had a good time. Is it like a perfect movie or a particular like much of a thinker? No.
Don't think.
Exactly.
Don't think, Daniel.
Don't think. That's right. The G's. They're gonna.
Don't think about
it. But to see my dad there, and to see my dad, not like we used to go to so many films together, and then just to be able to take him to that one, go to flicks, have a couple beers together, and just really enjoy it for what it is.
That is a great dad movie.
It is. It is
a dad movie.
And my mom really likes Tom Cruise too, so it's she'll enjoy it as well. She does like the first Top Gun. That being said, I'm really getting ready. I can already feel hating Top Gun Maverick in a few years after, every office and every office leader just uses it inevitably in virtually everything, and every analogy they build. It's
the problem when everybody sees a movie.
Exactly.
You've got to hear about it for the next 5 years.
Or they all get into Ted Lasso, and all of a sudden all the leaders start misquoting it and using it for
and then there's like so many layers to people misquoting Ted Lasso, because it's like Ted Lasso misattributing a quote to Walt Whitman that is misattributed to him, and then people are just attributing. Yeah, it's
the inception of bad. Yeah.
Yes.
Media literacy, guys. It's really important.
Right. Pay attention, please. Google.
All right, Dalton, Stuart. So Daniel, I'm putting you down as a pair there. So you've got Top Gun Maverick and The Fabelmans, right?
So,
okay, all right.
Those are both good films.
Yeah, they are. I think Dom Toretto, if his dad was still around, maybe he could go see one of those. His dad hadn't died in that. His dad hadn't died in that horrible, epic racetrack death in F9.
Man,
yeah. Dalton, Stewart, what is your the movie you're most likely to watch or recommend to your family?
Well, I did watch Glass Onion with my family. I did take them to see it for Thanksgiving, and it was a hit. So yeah, I can second that sentiment. I went and saw The Menu with my sister, who works in the service industry. That was a great time, and I think my dad would really like it. But the film that I am going to go with is my very good friend Marcel the Shell with cheese.
Yes.
I think this is going to hit for the family. It's everybody can watch it. There's nothing objectionable about it except for an extremely good pubic hair joke. Really. Just an aces joke. Jenny Slate really bringing this internet character to full life, giving it a real well-rounded sort of interesting interior life for this little shell. It's great. I don't know. It's a movie about movies too. It's got it's playing with documentary. It's playing with stop motion. It's doing so many different things. And again, it's very heartwarming and very just a sweet film about family and connection and looking for a place to belong. It's great.
How can you walk away from that film mad? It's just
it's impossible.
It's impossible. It brings so much warmth to the heart.
Talk about crying in films. God, Marcel the Shell. Straight to the heart.
Yeah.
Nana, I can't remember the character's name, but
it's just exciting to see A24 be able to do so many things this year.
Very different things.
That's always been their deal. I mean, for years now, is kind of a diverse slate of films that have a shared goal or shared sort of vibe. But this year, especially for them, felt like a really
breakout year.
A nice sampling of like what they're capable of producing and distributing.
Definitely, I think that a lot of their genre picks really did well. I mean, obviously, Everything Everywhere All at Once we'll get to later, but huge hit there. I'm gonna change up, and because Glass Onion, as I said, I wanted to take the family, didn't work out, but it would have been my selection naturally. But I'm gonna shift gears here. A movie that I don't know if I've talked to any of you about actually. A movie that I think actually would have done really well had it been marketed and put in theaters, especially in the May timeframe in which it came out on Disney+. That is Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers from our friends at the Lonely Island.
Okay.
Man, it's like a Who Framed Roger. It is. I know the phrase, the modern air quotes, Who Framed Roger Rabbit has been used for a lot of different movies, but I really think this is probably the most comparable film because it's a live action film that features a significant amount of animated characters. Another movie that is also about a very different side of Hollywood, which is like bootlegging and stuff. It was really clever. It has so many cameos that I feel like your mom and dad are gonna, oh, I know that animated character from the 50s. You know, they throw everything kind of at the kitchen sink, and it works for the most part. I had a really great time with it. Maybe I'm biased. I liked the animated Chip and Dale movies, TV show from like the 80s, 90s. But this is actually nothing. It's so meta because it's about their fame in the real world. I don't know. I had a great time with this movie. It was really sweet. It was really fun. It was pretty inoffensive. You get to hear J.K. Simmons play a stop motion animated Gumby like sheriff character. That was really fun. Yeah, it's a good time. I don't regret my time watching
You've convinced me to write it down. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, it's a fun time. All right. That takes us to our next special award, the movie you're least likely to watch or recommend to your parents. Watch with or recommend to your parents award. And Dalton, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Ooh, this is a tough one. Ooh, there's some good options on the table. There's some real sicko shit this year, you guys. Ooh, there's some nasty, mean-spirited.
What's your filthiest film?
Some nasty, mean-spirited movies this year. I love it. I'm gonna go with the weird pick, though. My immediate first thought is Speak No Evil, which is a film that goes so hard.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with a film that probably most of you, I don't think any of you probably got a chance to see because it didn't get a theatrical release. It is Amanda Kramer's Give Me Pity, which is a buck wild film starring the one and only Bette Midler's daughter, believe it or not. Sophie von Hasselberg is her name. She's playing a character called Sissy St. Clair in her Sissy St. Clair's small screen television debut. It is a 1-hour variety special that's haunted by a demon. It's very Adult Swim adjacent vibes, really kind of surreal, weird film with great musical numbers, incredible costumes, but just a vibe that I couldn't even begin to sell my parents on. Like, hey, this is not a movie for your family. This is a movie for a bunch of people who might be too high to actually watch it. It's a weird movie. It's definitely a good time. A friend of mine was visiting, and he was able to screen it at a art space that he works at. So he had screener access to it, and I got to check it out. And wow, what a picture. I don't think it's available to stream anywhere right now, but the trailer absolutely hits. You should go check that out. It's Give Me Pity. Amanda Kramer, definitely a film that I'm excited about, and one I hope to see more from Amanda Kramer because it is such an interesting kind of out there experiment of a film.
Man, you mentioning that, I'm going to check out Give Me Pity, but did you happen to catch a film that I am having a hard time finding, but I knew came out this year, the WNUF Halloween special? Do you know the original?
Mm-mm.
Oh, never mind then. I thought you'd know. It's okay. It's about a haunted unaired news broadcast. It's kind of a found footage.
Oh, that
film,
sounds cool.
But like half of it is legitimately made like commercials from the 90s. So it feels very authentic, but it's
cool.
ultimately very funny. But that film came out, I want to say like in 2013. And then its long-awaited sequel came out this year. But to my understanding, it's a very like Blu-ray only, have to buy directly from
Gotcha.
The distributor. But.
Yeah, I don't even know if this ended up getting distribution. So I know
Really?
it's a hard pick. In that regard, I can't recommend it to my family because I don't know where I would tell them to watch it. I got really excited. I thought it was on the Roku channel for a little bit. So I was like telling people, I was like, oh shit, you can watch this movie, but it is just the trailer, unfortunately. So Give Me Pity. Definitely keep an eye out for it, listener. Maybe someday it'll hit streaming.
We'll do some digging in the show notes. Check it out there. Laron Chapman, what is the movie you're least likely to watch with or recommend to your parents?
Well, I say least likely. I actually did show this to my mom.
Hell yeah.
It was a movie that's already been mentioned in this podcast is Men.
Oh boy.
My mom is not a movie person. Her favorite movies are Grease, Hope Floats, Jerry Maguire, what I mean? Like
Men feels natural in that
the
lineup.
hits,
Yeah.
So Men wasn't one that I should have watched with her, but really it was just my excuse to put it on, and so I do like it a little bit more than I think you do, Daniel, but I do have similar issues with it. But I think, sometimes when you watch a movie with somebody and you see it through their eyes because they're not having a good experience, and then so by the time we got to the end, with the ultimate, the sequence that everyone will talk about after they see it.
Whole lot of Rorys.
A whole lot of Rorys, yeah. Rory within a Rory within a Rory. You know, what do you call what are those little dolls called?
Yeah, Russian
Russian
dolls.
Russian dolls of Rorys. Yes, that sequence it offended her to such a degree that I don't know if she'll ever watch a movie that I recommend again, even if it does star Julia Roberts and George Clooney. You know, like it's just like
every single time that you recommend a movie, she's gonna be like, "Is it like that one movie?
Is it like Men?" That movie Men that you showed me.
Where it had the scene with the thing.
I was like, I'm so sorry, Mom. I really didn't think it was going to offend you that much. But it was a hard watch with her. So, yeah, don't show your mom that movie. She won't appreciate it. I promise.
Yeah, I can't imagine a universe in which my mom responds well to Men.
Listen, Laron, my dad got he got angry and offended by House of Gucci. I don't think he would make it through the first 10 minutes of it.
No. You know.
Daniel Bokemper.
Yeah, so this one is pretty hard, mostly because like the bar is set pretty high. I went to Bruno in theaters at my mom's request. Like she wanted to go see it, and
incredible.
Yeah, and she laughed her ass off at that. So I feel like I could recommend most things to her, and it wouldn't be too terrible. But my dad's a little harder nut to crack. But I think I know the film that both of them would be pretty repulsed by. And that is Kevin Smith's Clerks 3. I made it to this lineup. I saw Kevin Smith present this film when he was in Oklahoma City a few months back. Earlier this month, actually.
Is this movie, we never really got to talk about this properly. Is this more Clerks 1, Clerks 2, which are actually very different? Is this more early Kevin Smith, or is this more like Tusk?
There's no early Kevin Smith. He gone. It's just, and even then, early Kevin Smith was horribly misguided in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
like you like I used to love Chasing Amy, and now I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's a problematic film right there. But I think the one thing when I listen to hear him talk, and the one thing that I think I felt most compelled when I was younger to Kevin Smith was just how much he celebrated movies. So with his earlier stand-up specials, they're more lectures. An Evening with Kevin Smith, and then An Evening with Kevin Smith 2, Evening Harder. Those two are solid, and to see him speak again about films and to know he still has that passion for movie making and a love of cinema, even if he himself may not be the best storyteller all the time. But I don't know. I feel like this film, it's just like the thing that my parents would hate about it is it's a Kevin Smith film. So we got that layer of disdain. And then how much it's about just New Jersey. It's so regional, like a lot of his films, that it's just they would be utterly alienated as the Midwesterners they are. And I think like it does speak to something about like, you know, heart and mortality and those things, which are, I think, fairly universal. But for films that approach that, you know, there's also like from 2012, Michael Haneke's Amour, which is a very depressing film, but it actually talks about some of the same things that Clerks 3 is trying to talk about. It's just it's Kevin Smith telling you instead of Michael Haneke. And again, I don't know. I think he might not be quite the storyteller that the former is. Yeah, again, it does have a little bit of heart, but it's still Kevin Smith, and often he's terribly misguided. And sometimes he gets so obsessed with just saying something he thinks is clever that it's to the utter detriment of the sincerity of his film. So yeah, no, I don't think I'll be recommending Clerks 3 to my parents.
I'm going to pick one that I, in fact, was planning to watch with my future mother-in-law that I abandoned ship after I saw it at a press screener, and that is Babylon, a movie I worked really hard to sell her and Lauren, my fiance Lauren, on before Christmas, before I had gotten a press invite for it, saying, yeah, we should go see this. It's Damien Chazelle. Here's the trailer. Oh, it's historic Hollywood. It's got Brad Pitt. You know, I was like, oh, yeah, her mom's going to go for this. Got super excited. Then went and saw it at a press screener, and I walked away. It was and I was like, oh, yeah, not about to watch watch a movie that in which you can see scenes of, I don't know, people having champagne bottles popped up their butthole. I don't know if I want to watch that with my future mother-in-law. So we pivoted very quickly to Puss in Boots instead.
Safe bet.
Safe choice.
And you know, it was a very good choice, but yeah, safe choice indeed. That said, I don't think I can think of anything more horrifying than watching Jackass Forever with my parents. They would be mortified within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What if they're really
intro?
into
The
it,
intro itself, but the Spike Jonze intro. Forget it.
I will say, yeah.
Forget it.
That is my pick, Babylon with an edition of Jackass Forever. All right, let's move on to round 3. What is your number 3 movie of 2022 and why? Daniel Bokemper, I'll start with you.
I'm not quite through with the mysteries yet. Decision to Leave is my number 3 from Park Chan-wook, a fantastic film. He's famous for Joint Security Area and the original Old Boy, the good one. And along with
The Handmaiden, can't forget that one.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But also, and I will butcher his name a little bit, but he is a fantastic actor. Park Hae-il, gives probably, and I'm saying this knowing full well that Memories of Murder is one of my favorite films of all time, which he also stars in, but I think he gives one of his most just best performances of his career in this film. And I think it's just the story itself is so emotionally stirring and it's so intricately woven. And then on top of it, you have this detective who suffers from extreme insomnia, and to the point where it actually affects the film's editing. And again, this might be one of the best editing I think I've seen, of what I've seen, at least in 2022. And I think you just have to watch every second. If you look away, you miss something that's so important, but you're not going to have much trouble not looking away because it's just that compelling. It's just so great. I cannot give it enough praise. And again, just a mystery, just so how. And it almost has these 2 parts. It's almost a 2-part film that has an abrupt pace, but it does it so well and so seamlessly. And again, that editing just makes everything feel so smooth and really captures that idea of a very frantic mind racing. But it does it in a way that's not disorienting. And I think that's a very, very hard balance to strike, to not be an assault on your senses. And again, I just think it does it so well. Cannot say enough good things about it, and I promise that is my last mystery movie.
I love Tang Wei in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Her performance is so good. Dude.
She's great.
Rules.
Yeah.
I think, what's funny is that movie is kind of a pretty straight neo-noir, and I think it just speaks so much to the power of his direction because it doesn't feel it really doesn't feel like it, at least for me, until the very end when I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're dealing with. But the way he constructs things, the editing, and the way he decides to reveal certain plot beats and character beats really kind of kept me guessing for quite a while.
Yeah, a pretty close analogous, I would say, a film that I discovered recently that I had no idea about. It's an older film, but this one, it feels like they would make such a great double feature, would be Brian De Palma's Blowout, starring John Travolta, which, again, has a very, has a very ending that strikes a very similar chord. In a lot of ways, but at the same time just has this great mystery. And that one does a lot more with sound design, but what this does visually, I think. So again, just a great sensory experience.
All right. Decision to Leave. Great film. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Dalton Stuart, what is your number 3 movie of 2022?
My number 3 movie is a 2021 movie by some metrics, because that's when it had its festival release, but it got its wide release this year. It is Kogonada's After Yang.
Come on, Yang. What are you doing? Come on.
What happened to Yang?
I don't know. He shut down last night. He won't restart.
Has this happened before?
No.
If we can't get Yang fixed, we're not gonna buy another sibling for Mika.
It is an interior core problem. I need your permission to break open the core. We've always known that some bots are equipped with spyware. You might not want this bot in your house anymore.
I wish I had a real memory.
What do you mean?
Ooh, what a movie. A film about identity and memory and family and personhood and so much, and so beautiful, and a film that's like doing science fiction in such a restrained and interesting way, hiding its most sci-fi elements in the background a lot of the time, not really explaining everything about the intricacies of the world that exists to you. It's just sort of allowing the world to exist and breathe. And again, What a year for Colin Farrell. I mean, really, really tough for me to nail one performance, but I think this is the one for me. He's just really lights out in this. I don't think he's ever been better. And the whole cast really is really strong, and maybe one of the opening credit sequences of the year.
Absolutely.
Come on. That dance sequence is so good. I'm just in love with this film. I think it's really tender and lovely, and it just has such an open heart, and yet like has this melancholy to it as well. This knowledge that you can never really know the people around you, and it's hard to not, when somebody is so intimately a part of your life, it can be easy to take them for granted. And I think that the film does a really good job of playing with that idea and sort of drawing it out into a science fiction context. And just, I want to get the actor's name because I can't remember it off the top of my head. Justin H. Min, who plays Yang, is also giving an excellent performance. Jodie Turner-Smith as Farrell's wife doesn't have quite as much to do as either of those two, but she's also got a great performance in this. But really, Justin H. Min has this monologue about a documentary about tea. That's a real documentary that he's referencing. But there's this back and forth that him and Colin Farrell have about tea that is about so much more than tea. It's about culture and life, and it's what it means to be an android with an identity that is going to cause people to other you. It's just so many interesting ideas in this film. I really do love it.
Laron Chapman, what is your number 3 film?
My number 3 film is After Sun. I love this movie so much.
You mean the sequel to After Yang?
Right, absolutely. I love this movie so much. Daniel, you mentioned Decision to Leave. I have not yet seen it. But as far as editing goes, for me, and without having seen that, this to me, as far as editing is not something that I normally pinpoint in a movie. I'm a writer director. I'm not really a craftsman in that sense. I can tell when something doesn't work for me. But this is one of the few films where I actually noticed the editing, and I noticed what the editing was doing, and I noticed how the editing was very much a part of the story. Like how images are shown to us, what follows the image that you see before. It's all very intentional. And then when it culminates to such a moving final act, that final act really is the movie. But just that, again, and we kind of brought it up earlier, but that 360 swivel at the very end of the movie where we're cutting between the present, the past, and then the liminal space between the two of those where you don't really, no one knew about it. That just happened to be documented. It was just such a powerful close to a movie, and it just reverberates, as you leave, every sequence that you see, just how important, the small moments in life are, and what triggers certain memories, how, and it gets recontextualized as we get older, when the older version of ourselves revisiting, memories and realizing that space that maybe we didn't realize, just unearths a lot of things. And so I found it to be like a movie that I think will reward repeat viewings. And it's just a powerful, small scale, nuanced slice of life type of movie. That I think, is just extraordinarily crafted. So
again, another film that I think the editing is tremendous. The editing plus cinematography really are kind of the magic.
Feature debut of the year for me in a pretty big way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And what's the actor's name? Pascal.
Paul
Pascal. Yeah. Fantastic. His daughter's great too. But I mean, both of them. Great indie film.
Yeah. Garrett recommends. That's After Sun. My number 3 film of the year we've already talked about, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery. I love Rian Johnson. You can go listen to our review where I gush on him. Maybe I'm a Rian Johnson fanboy. I just think I share a lot of sensibilities with him where he clearly loves he loves films, he loves genre, but he also likes to pick them apart and rebuild them in a way that is interesting and different, and sort of trying to push the audience in certain unique ways. And I think, he's doing the same thing with Agatha Christie novels with these Knives Out movies. Glass Onion, I agree. I don't think it's quite as tight as Knives Out. I think Knives Out was a pretty lean movie. Whereas this movie definitely indulges probably a little more than it needed to. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I watched it the second time over the holiday weekend, and I still loved it. I think it just validated how much I loved the movie, but I definitely felt the runtime a little more, and I was able to see, here's where we could have cut some things. Now, what I will say, though, is the one thing we haven't hit on here, is just sort of the examination of wealth. You know, you hinted at that. We're really focusing specifically on ultra wealthy billionaires in this film, and the way this film looks at not just the billionaire character who totally conveniently this movie just happened to come out like 2 weeks after Elon Musk bought Twitter, even though Rian Johnson had written the film in 2020 during the pandemic. It just felt like, I mean, it's not about Elon Musk, but, you know, just as we were sort of having this conversation about this guy seems like he's kind of dumb, actually. And then this movie comes out, and the whole thing that's beautiful. And I think the thing I watched more closely the second time is Benoit Blanc is convinced this whole time of the genius of Miles. He's like, well, he's a smart guy, though, so he wouldn't do X, Y, Z. And I'm not going to spoil where the film goes, but the movie is definitely examining, honing in on what classifies these people as air quotes geniuses.
Yeah.
And whenever we put people on pedestals like that and we give them this much power, how do we as working class people react to them? And we are able to look at that through various figures, the rest of the cast, a politician, a fashion designer, a men's rights activist, influencer on Twitch. You know, you get to see sort of how these people they're essentially there to win his favor so they can benefit themselves. And I wonder if part of like our obsession, I would probably globally to a certain extent, but especially in the United States, our obsession with the wealthy is because we're trying to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. And I love how it examines that and breaks it down. So I found that to be a very timely and important idea to examine. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it's just a great time. It's rip-roaring, great time. It's super funny. The cast is great. We've already hit all the high points on that one. But that is my number 3 movie of the year, and I cannot wait to see what Rian Johnson does next.
And he's doing what Kenneth Branagh is not doing well with the whodunit movies, I think.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, those movies are okay.
They're okay.
They're just okay.
They're okay.
Yeah,
They're okay.
Yeah, exactly.
They're okay.
All right. Our next special award is the movie you wish you'd seen on the big screen award. Dalton, Stuart.
Caleb, this is a really tough one. There's a couple of heavy hitters here that I missed. I don't want to steal your thunder, I think, because I think I know where you're going with this one. So I'll say I can't believe I'm going to say this. I really wish I had seen Michael Bay's Ambulance on an IMAX screen. That movie kicks ass.
Dude, that movie does kick ass. Thank you for bringing it up. That movie's amazing. It is like if Michael Bay bought a drone and gave the drone cocaine. That's the movie.
the stuff they do with drone photography in that movie is so cool.
Yes.
It's just like really, really inventive action filmmaking. It's not the best movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is one of the coolest movies I saw this year. It's not even close. It's so cool. Gyllenhaal is giving a deranged performance.
It's incredible.
Boss man, what's up, man? Flamingo just got here. What you want me to do with him?
They came to the office? No, they're supposed to be the Turks and Caicos property. She turns 6 tomorrow. I'm gonna get in so much trouble, man. We have the elephants, we have the bouncy castle. Tommy, the clown is already there. We've gone over this so many times.
Blue paint, sprayer, flamingos.
No, not the flamingos! Listen, no, the blue paint comes with the spray gun. Just leave the flamingos alone. They are 2 separate events.
Abdul Mateen giving like this very grounded kind of classical like Hollywood hero performance, and the two of them playing off of each other is so fun. And again, just the filmmaking really would have benefited from the scale of that theater setting, especially because this had an IMAX release, and I think that would have looked really nice.
You know, it's such a bummer about Michael Bay. He made all those Transformers movies, but the thing is, he
could have been doing this shit the whole time.
Exactly. It's so good. It's so much fun. And yeah, it's a Michael Bay movie, but like once you know what you're in for and you know what his tics are, lean into him, and it's so much fun.
He calls out his own movie in this movie.
Yes, he does.
What? You madman.
My favorite scene, sorry, just because I haven't got to talk about this on a podcast this year, is, and it's one of the most Michael Bay scenes in a very, very, very Michael Bay movie, is there's a scene early in the movie when Jake Gyllenhaal's in an empty warehouse full of cars by himself on his cell phone, and there's like a drone flying around and cross-cutting, and it's just him in a warehouse, and he's trying to make it look as flashy and sexy as possible. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it's
reminded
incredible.
me of Hobbs and Shaw. Like, remember they were just walking through whatever, and it's just the drone is just it's awesome between them.
That's a great pick, Dalton. Thank you so much for bringing that up for both of us. Laron Chapman.
Yes, I actually saw most of everything I wanted to in theaters, but I don't want to steal your thunder, but RRR, I would have loved to have seen that in a crowded theater. But yeah, I live at the theater, so there wasn't much I missed, in theaters. So even Glass Onion for the 1 week that it was here. So, but RRR is the one that I saw that I loved so much that I know would have benefited to see on a big screen with a large audience.
Totally.
We will have our day, Laron.
Yes,
we'll have our day. Yes, Daniel Bokemper.
Yeah, this was one that I caught at home, and while I was watching it, I was just like, man, what this would sound like to just be in utter darkness with just all of these explosions and these sounds going off from every direction. And it was reaffirmed that this experience was something I missed too by a GoodTrash media contributor and occasional guest on the podcast itself, Arthur Gordon.
Oh, that one. That one.
Yes, that guy.
I should have known.
And the movie in question is the documentary Fire of Love from Saragossa. It's beyond it just being a brilliant and tragic documentary about two volcanologists. You also get some of the because of them and because of their work, and really ultimately how both courageous and crazy it was. You get some of the most intense footage ever captured of volcanoes exploding, of lava right there, of walls 20 feet high of lava or magma or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a geologist.
You're not a volcanologist.
I'm not a volcanologist either. And this movie reminds me why.
Get with it, Daniel.
I know. I need to reach out of my comfort zone and just go up to a live volcano. But yeah, I just think there's something so mesmerizing about the flowing lava and the exploding mountains and just the flames and the fire. But within all of that, just a very sincere love story about two people who happen to turn their passion into a career. And unfortunate, it's something that happened a while ago, so I don't think I'm spoiling too much to say that it led to their demise. But I don't know. It's just something I wanted to see that footage so bad in the big screen, and I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to at this point.
That's a great pick. That is a notable blind spot. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this specific documentary. So great pick. My selection was RRR, but I'm gonna just because to shake it up. I've already talked about how I just think that would be an epic crowd pleaser. Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I say this, Dalton, I know you did not like this movie.
It's Dalton.
Why?
It's fine.
I think this could have been a great Fathom event style thing because Laron and I watched it with a group of friends who were big Weird Al fans. And
I'm sure that was lovely.
Oh, it was so much fun. So imagine, I'm just thinking if we put that and times it by 12, 12 times the number of people in a movie theater.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a really, really A+.
Yeah, it got a good response from the group we saw it with. So yeah, I think I might have liked the movie more because of how much they loved it.
I get that.
I guarantee if I'd watched it by myself at home, I would have been 3 stars. But because I gave it 4.5 stars, just because mostly for the experience, because it was funny, but just the fact that everyone kind of fed off the jokes or got the visual gags, because I know the Weird Al history, all that stuff just played so well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw that one out there just as a sort of a dark horse. All right. The movie that left you wanting more award is our next special award. I'm going to clarify on what I mean, and there's not really a wrong way to approach this. Both of these approaches could work. The movie that left you wanting more could be you were so impressed you wanted more movie or more performance or fill in the blank. Or it could have been I had such high expectations I was left wanting more. Either way, the outcome is you wanted more of something. So, what is the movie that left you wanting more, Daniel Bokemper?
Yeah, so I'm going to go in the latter camp in a movie that I had very high expectations for, but left me desiring more, and that is Bones and All. We've spoken about this a little bit. I loved the director's previous film, Call Me By Your Name, as well as the new Suspiria, but I think what works in the director's favor is that tendency to have somewhat underdeveloped characters. And I think in Call Me By Your Name with the character Oliver, he's he's not like, I'm not going to say he's an enigma because he's not, but he is a bit of a mystery. There is a bit of something you leave. He's kind of a truncated character, and I think that works to the film's advantage. But here with the leads, who again, performances are great, cinematography is fantastic, music is excellent, and overall, for the most part, I think the story holds, but it seems to be missing something. It seems to be like I couldn't fully get behind either of the two protagonists as much as I wanted to. I just couldn't, and maybe that's possibly the point, but I can't help but think that maybe especially Timothée Chalamet's character, Lee, I think there was just something that was just missing that kept me from being fully into it and enjoying these characters and watching their journey and watching the tragedy as much as I wanted to. I don't know. There was that connective tissue was just missing a little bit. There wasn't enough meat on the bones. There wasn't anything to sink my teeth into. There was, it left me very hungry, and that's the last one.
That is not what you want to feel about a movie about cannibalism.
No. I know. I wanted to not eat for a while, and it's still good. Like it is good. I think it is a pretty good film. It just was missing something. And again, it was a film that I thought it was going to change my opinion about cannibalism. And I guess it
didn't win you over, huh?
It didn't win me over. Yeah.
Dang it.
I know.
There's still time.
I know. There's more.
Oh, you get years ahead of you, Daniel. I mean, we saw how old the Mark Rylance character was, so you get time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got your whole life to get into vor. Yeah.
Yes.
Dalton, Stuart, what is the movie that left you wanting more?
Sorry, fellas, I'm going to be a hater and say I don't think I like Rian Johnson movies anymore. I didn't really care for Glass Onion. I don't know. Here's a consideration. Both movies are about how the wrong people are rich, and I would say maybe we could just have no rich people. Is a world that I think is possible. No, well, I guess yes. Rian Johnson doesn't seem to think so either.
He does not.
He seems to think that if Ana de Armas and Janelle Monáe were rich, that everything would be fine. And I think that lacks imagination. I also don't know if this is a COVID movie or not. It's kind of a COVID movie, and then it's just not until it is until it doesn't want it to be anymore.
Mm-hmm. It is until you get the magic spray in your throat.
It kind of MacGuffin's COVID,
which they never explain what it is.
Sure fucking does. Which is a funny bit.
I think that's the thing. They kind of try to hand wave it with the comedy, which works for me, but I totally understand why it would bother you.
It doesn't work for me. What are other things about this that I don't love? Jared Leto's kombucha. What are we doing here, people? Take another pass at that joke.
I've got one. Okay, so I've got something that is kind of a lingering reservation. Is I feel like at the end of the day, we talk about this a little bit on the podcast, but the film feels kind of like somewhat inconsequential. Like with Knives Out, the original one, it felt like the result. It was like definitive. Whoa. There has been a paradigm shift, and it's good. Mm-hmm. And her drinking out of that coffee mug, the my house, my coffee, my rules, or my rules, my coffee. That ending scene was so sequenced. Whereas this, not to spoil too much of anything, but it feels like justice wasn't really served, at least in the same way that Knives Out had it. So
it depends on how much you. Yeah, it depends on how much you believe in a billionaire's ability to rebound from bad things happening to them.
Sure. It just feels too clever by half. The doubling back on itself to be like, surprise, we've been withholding information from you this entire time does not make you clever. That just makes you a cheater. That doesn't make your mystery more compelling.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I
get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a brickhead. Love it. I think it's one of the finest indie films that American filmmakers have ever produced. Love Brick. I think I like about Brothers Bloom Defender. I think The Last Jedi is maybe the best Star Wars movie. Depends on the day of the week. I should have been into this movie. I didn't have a bad time. Like I said, I took the family to it. We had a good laugh. I agree with that. Somebody talked about playing it, how it plays with the crowd. And it totally hits with the crowd. Really nice time. But it just, I don't know. It's a film that I was extremely excited for, and it didn't quite hit for me.
It's kind of hollow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, fair enough. It bums me out, but also I get it.
Yeah.
Laron Chapman, what is the movie that left you wanting more?
Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg. I love David Cronenberg. Like to the like Videodrome. That's somebody that I bleed. That director, and I had such high hopes for this movie, and I don't hate it. I don't even dislike it. I just was very cold on it the entire time. I think aesthetically it's great. I'm all about the Kristen Stewart whisper talking thing.
Her fucking weird mutters and pervert.
It's creepy and strange and weird, and like I don't know. It's unnerving, but I'm like, well, it's compelling, I guess, because every time she talks, I'm like uncomfortable. But there's just something like by the time it was done, it felt inconsequential. It felt very like the world building was there, but the story just didn't have any. There wasn't anything. They didn't have anything new to say,
Yeah.
And so that was just really disappointing coming from somebody that I know that is pretty great in this field, So, Crimes of the Future left me wanting a lot more than what I got.
A lot of questions that just like go unresolved in that movie, and it expects you to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I totally get what you mean.
Yeah.
At the same time, it just feels, and this is me because I had very high expectations and considered that for this pick too. In that it just felt a little bit rushed. Like for some reason I was like, oh, I'm going to get a David Cronenberg museum and it's going to be awesome. And it wasn't that. It was very, again, it felt like almost Cronenberg light. It almost felt like Cronenberg, like somebody trying to make a Cronenberg film.
Yeah.
Oh, that's always a bad thing when it feels like a filmmaker's making a like parody version of themselves.
A little bit, like it. Yeah.
Well, you guys all went with a disappointment angle, so I will say if I'm going to pick disappointment, we actually have another award dedicated to overall biggest disappointment of the year. I will say in terms of things that left me wanting more from the disappointing angle, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And that movie, as we talked about on the podcast, had an impossible task. I think similar to some of the films we discussed earlier. I actually think the ingredients for a really like once in a generation great introspective emotional movie was there, and they got too distracted by all the Marvel setup for the future. It's like 30 minutes of just totally unnecessary mechanics for other properties, spin-off shows and everything. And it really took away what I thought was a very strong start and a very strong end of the movie overall. So I was left wanting more of the sort of homage to Chadwick Boseman. I was left wanting a little more of the emotional, like what impacts does this have on the Kingdom of Wakanda to his family in an immediate way. And again, it's not that stuff isn't there necessarily. I wanted more of that and less of the, hey, here's the Ironheart setup, or hey, here's, again, I like the character. Oh my gosh. I like Namor. I liked the character, but it just felt like there was a lot of setup where we could have, I would have rather focused on one thing. So left wanting more focus on that film. On the positive side, movies that left me wanting more movie because I just loved it so much. Prey, the Dan Trachtenberg's prequel movie, Predator movie. Man, we got to see Amber Midthunder just kill it in the lead. I thought it reinvents. It's both following the plot template of the original while also reinventing Predator as a franchise, and it really gets me excited for the possibilities. We could either do a follow up to this story, or we could take this whole framework of like, okay, we did badass and indigenous warrior versus the Predator. Let's do it with a different setting. I mean, there's just so many possibilities. Creatively, I'm really excited for what they do next with it. And it seemed like it was a huge hit on Hulu. We don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I know Disney touted how it was like one of the most streamed movies ever. So I'm excited to see what they do with that next. I'd also say, much to probably a lot of people's chagrin, I really liked Avatar: The Way of Water. It's a 3-hour plus movie. Mostly, it's not that I wanted more from this movie. I just want the sequels. I'm actually excited, and I didn't think I would be, so that's a plus. I want more world. I also want a little more James Cameron turning things on its head. This movie kind of did it a little bit, the second one, but I think we really need to go all in on the third one. So those are the films that left me wanting more this year. Let's move on to round 4, where we discuss our number 2 movie of 2022. Dalton, Stuart, what is your number 2 pick?
My number 2 pick is the already mentioned Jordan Peele's Nope. A film about spectacle, a film that is spectacle. And I'll just say this because I think we've talked about it a lot this evening, and I appreciate everything everybody said. But for me, it all comes back to Michael Wincott, the one and only character actor that I love dearly, talking about that one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. I love it. I just love it. I love this movie. I think it's so good. Every performance is absolutely calibrated. And the photography on this, I mean, Hoyt van Hoytema really shows up for Jordan Peele on this. It looks incredible. I'm really glad I got to see this in IMAX twice because it absolutely earns that bigness.
Yeah.
Big skies, big horizons, big performances. And it's got the Akira slide. Come on.
Yes.
See, yeah.
Another one
People
for
love
the
it.
books.
Yeah. What a movie.
I just love how much Jordan Peele is a huge nerd. It's great.
Man, it's doing so much. It really is doing more than anybody asked it to do. It's got so much on its mind, and I think it's like doing it in a really like by engaging with sort of the disregard we have for animals. It's like really saying some interesting things about Hollywood and movie making as a whole. I just think it's got so much on its mind, and every time I revisit it or even just think about it, I find myself like finding new stuff. Yeah, a movie that went from a 4.5 to a 5 pretty aggressively on repeat watch.
Always a sign of a great movie when you're constantly thinking about it later. Laron Chapman, what is your number 2 movie of 2022?
Another movie that's already been mentioned is Tar. In a world where my number 1 pick didn't exist, Tar would have been my number 1 pick, but I will not spoil what that is. But Tar, yeah, for me was one that I'm still unpacking even now. Yeah. And I love Cate Blanchett so much. As much as I want Michelle Yeoh to win the award for the Oscar this year, it might be it might be Cate Blanchett's 3rd Oscar, and it would be deserving even still. But it's such a powerful film and such a great film about, again, cancel culture, power structure, ego. It's a great deconstruction of that. And I think that's something that's really important and relevant right now with all the Kanye Wests and Elon Musks of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, man, I'm so glad with this. I was bummed. It did not make my top 5. It's barely teetering in my top 10. So I'm glad it's came up in this show. So thanks to you and Dalton for giving that some well-deserved attention. And listeners, you should absolutely see this movie. It's well worth your time. Daniel Bokemper, what is your selection for number 2?
Man, I wish I'd seen Tar. I'm going to. But in the meantime, my number 2, it's Ty West's Pearl, starring Mia Goth.
Yeah, okay.
Star the world has ever known, so that I may get far, far away from this place.
Caring for your family during these times is admirable, but you only get one take at this life.
If only they would just die.
Pardon?
Nothing.
It's like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and The Red Shoes had a head-on collision, and Pearl was the bloody aftermath. Again, you cannot look away from this film. It's the second half of a rare treat, a double feature within the same year, the technically prequel, but also follow-up to X, which isn't quite as good, but I still felt was compelling enough to get me very, very excited about Pearl, and Pearl definitely delivers and just completely gets me excited about a franchise that I had literally no idea about before 2022. And I'm so excited for the follow-up. I don't know if we'll get it in 2023, but Maxine, XXX Maxine. But yeah, it's just, there's so many things going well with this film. It plays on the pandemic era, but it uses the Spanish flu as the analogous for that, which I think a lot of people forget. It is quite similar to what we're dealing with now, and in a different light, but still, it plays on that idea of just chasing the fame dragon and wanting to be out of the doldrums you're stuck within, for lack of a better term, to be on your family's farm and to just want something better. And the way it's shot, it's just so bright and just so vivid and technicolor, and I think also there is a Mia Goth, cannot understate her performance in this film.
About closing credits already, and we'll talk about closing credits.
Oh, yes.
Amazing.
I have messed with my friends a few too many times trying to recreate that with them. And
Yep.
But yeah, I also think a little bit before that, there is it's technically she's speaking to another character, her sister-in-law, but
yeah,
for all intents and purposes, it's a monologue, and there's just this. I think it's like I've heard 7.5. I've heard 9.
Minutes, 8,
yeah, I don't know. A long one, a long single tape, but just so compelling
What
and
a
so
monologue.
moving. Yeah,
It's the best monologue of the year, bar none.
Right. Yes, and it captures so much, and I think that alone just like elevated that film. And it was one that I went back and I came back and I'm like, I think I liked it, but then I just wake up the next day and it's even more. It's just in my brain about how much that film has accomplished. And again, I can't say enough. And I'm so excited. I hope Mia Goth gets all the accolades she gets, even if she does not get it for Pearl. I think this is the film where people are going to be like, oh wait, we
watch this monologue.
Yes, this is what you need if you're going to let. What is it? I'm thinking of. She wasn't the star of the film, but she won an Oscar for it. Why am I drawing a blank on her name? Les Mis.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, winning for that. I think. I mean, that was a strong performance, but like I think Mia Goth's accomplished even more with her monologue in this film than that did. So I think if we're going to acknowledge that, we need to give some recognition to Mia Goth. But again, very excited, very great film. Happily will place it in my number 2. I feel like Tar, what you've described to me not seeing this film, is definitely a film that could mix up some things had I seen it, but I still feel very, 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 very strongly about Pearl's placement here.
Yeah, it's a great film, great top-notch performance, and it does. We're getting a part 3 before too long, and
it's Douglas Sirk if he did a horror film. Essentially, it feels that way. Like
is it a horror film though? Like that's the thing.
True.
I love it because it's another genre bending thing.
Yeah.
It's got horror elements, and especially coming off extra thing. Oh, it's a horror movie, but it really is more like a drama that just happens to have some of those elements in there.
It feels like an old 20s, 30s, like you said, just melodrama that just goes really dark towards the end. So, but yeah, Mia Goth, my God, yeah, she was great in X too. I mean, I thought she was great in that, even though I prefer Pearl to X, but
yeah.
It's kind of unreal how much better Pearl is than X.
For me. At first, I liked them both, but the more I think about it, it was like kind of after our podcast when we talked about it, I'm just like, it really, it's night and day.
I'm gonna go home and rent Pearl. I think
Pearl's a lot more memorable.
I gotta rewatch this movie.
Yeah, do it.
All right, my number 2 movie is the intersection of a lot of things I like and a very interesting time in my life. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
I want to tell you a story. It's a story you may think you know, but you don't.
Over there! What is that?
Papa! It speaks!
He's just a puppet!
No, I'm not. I'm a real boy!
People are sometimes afraid of things they don't know.
I don't understand.
It's a Del Toro film, number 1. I love his sort of love for the unloved, so to speak. We've seen him. I mean, this has built a career out of this. It's stop motion, which I would have said it was a lost art if we hadn't gotten so many great stop motion films in the last 2 years. And this is
3
really
this year alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's been a really, really great year for stop motion animation. I think this one's the best.
4. I forgot Wendell and Wild.
Wendell and Wild.
Oh, Wendell and Wild. Yeah. Oh man, 4 in 1 year. And it's a year without a Leica film. And usually Leica's been the one that's been carrying the torch of stop motion for years. So it's really great to see that, again, if Netflix is going to slowly dismantle the things that are keeping the institution of Hollywood together, at least they're giving us a tour-driven passion projects like Del Toro's Pinocchio. He'd been trying to get this movie made since 2008, at least. That's when he was first on the record saying he wanted to make the movie. I love it for a couple of reasons. Let's say number 1, for years, as long as Disney especially has been doing these like remakes of their animated classics, I've been saying like, I'm not against us doing more versions of these things. But if we're going to do them, you really need to reinvent and justify why we're revisiting it. Because if you're just watching a movie and it's a lesser version of the most popular version out there,
the Robert Zemeckis version, same year.
Oh yeah, same year. That makes me so mad. I swear Disney's like, Netflix is making a Pinocchio, and they rush that thing. And also the animation in that is terrible. Anyway, side project. Yes. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, not to be confused with the Robert Zemeckis Disney Plus Pinocchio, which is terrible. But no, it's so I love that this is a fresh take that is much closer to the original sort of like dark fairy tale. And I love that he sets it against the backdrop of fascist Italy. He's able to sort of use that framing to explore the relationship between a father and a son in a society that is very unforgiving of people who don't conform. I also just think the larger themes of appreciating the value of life and the relationships we have with our parents and children was, it was really, really moving. It just really spoke to me this year. And I think you get to the end of the movie without spoiling it. It's definitely a bittersweet ending. It's probably honestly not a family movie. I probably recommend it for more like young adult audiences and adults, like 12 and up. Because it's a really dark, sad story that doesn't fall in line with any of the most of the Disney tropes. It just sort of ends kind of as a reminder that life is finite, and the best thing we can do is appreciate the loved ones we have in our lives and never take them for granted, and appreciate what makes those relationships unique. I don't have much more to say about it. It's an outstanding film. I loved it. Maybe the musical numbers aren't as strong as you might like. I think I've heard that criticism. I think it's fair. But just everything from the animation to the voice performances to the direction to the attention to detail, just to the really rich themes they're implementing in a story that a lot of people know really well already, really stuck out to me this year. So my number 2 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, now streaming on Netflix. So that brings us to our next special award, which is the biggest disappointment of 2022 award. Laron Chapman, we'll start with you.
Babylon. I love Damien Chazelle so much. I had such high hopes for this movie. Again, I think a lot of it is great, but enough of it is not that it definitely brought my review down to leaning towards the negative. So Babylon, still, I think worth seeing for a lot of mixed reasons, but for the most part was the biggest disappointment, given all the hype I had for it in my own head from his previous work.
Yeah, that one was a bummer. Even if I think the thing that makes it the hardest to swallow is that there's like so much good.
There's so much good in it.
As we've already discussed.
I wish it was just a complete disaster so I could just disregard it altogether. But the fact that so much is good about it, it's disappointing that 2 hours of it is not. 2 hours of the 3 hours is not.
Yeah, agreed. Dalton Stuart?
Ooh, I'm going to be a hater. It's time for me to put on my hater hat.
Do it.
I don't know. Should be much more excited about a year with the Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah.
Well, PU, stinky. That's what I say about Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
PU. It's cool when they let Sam do Sam stuff. You know, he has fun a couple of times in there.
The second half, specifically the last act, kind of goes full Raimi.
The last act has got some fun stuff with the zombie. But I feel like there's some moments in like the second act where I don't know, who cares about spoiling a Marvel movie? You saw it in theaters if you give a shit about this dumb movie. When Scarlet Witch is like murking people at Carmitage and in the other universe, like it definitely goes Sam Raimi a couple of times with some of the camera work. Some real clever use of mirrors and some body contortion stuff. I don't know. There are things to like here. Definitely the things that I like about Sam Raimi are on display occasionally, but this movie ain't it. And if Sam was going to come out of retirement, I really wish it was for something else.
Yeah, I just don't trust when Disney's like, oh, we got this really big director. We're going to put on a Marvel film, and it's like, oh, and we're going to give them I keep hearing sometimes. I hear it with like Taika Waititi, but I heard it with Sam Raimi. It was like, we gave them unlimited creative control, and I'm like, no,
sure you did.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
yeah.
No, there was a producer screaming in his ear.
Hit this beat and hit this beat.
Yeah, unlimited creative control. That's
all these cameos.
As long as you can make it work with everything we have pre-bid.
Yes, the producer will be screaming at you in your ear.
Well, and that movie came together really, really fast. So one thing I heard, I need to find the interview. Kevin Feige had said way earlier this year was that he would, and I think this is the point the MCU is at. They can only afford to get like the biggest director, like, because that's the thing. They keep upping the ante. There's really only so many more places they can go, like genuinely. And so it's like, okay, well,
we get for David Fincher's.
I mean, at this point,
he'll never do it. But
you say that, it's just that's where we're at though. Like it, and whenever Dalton, I was very disappointed, especially whenever literally 3 weeks before this we got Everything Everywhere All at Once, which went full multiverse shenanigans. So not only did we get a very lame multiverse movie, we also got a super lame Sam Raimi movie. So the two elements that it had working in its favor for me totally missed the boat.
Yeah, this is a movie that I walked out of like, okay, well, it was a movie I kind of saw on a whim. I didn't plan my day around it. Just, the wife and I had some extra time to kill. So we're like, hey, let's go see a movie. And we both kind of liked the first Doctor Strange. All right. We saw it in theaters together. So we're like, yeah, let's go check it out. Nah, man. No. It's a pass for me.
Yeah. Which is funny because I think that was actually the biggest. I think that's the highest grossing Marvel movie. I don't think Black Panther's caught up to it yet. So
really,
yeah, it's pretty close. I think Black Panther's going to pass it by the time it's done with the theatrical run.
Sure.
But I think it actually has the biggest opening. I'm going to verify this, but I'm pretty sure last I read it had the biggest opening weekend of the year. If I'm not mistaken.
Multiverse of Madness did.
Mm-hmm.
That's
wild.
At the box office. Yeah,
they should put David Lynch on the next one. Could you imagine? It's like 10 minutes of an asteroid just floating in space and just this haunting music. And they're like, David, can we cut the music? Who gives a fuck how long my scene is? It's art. Like, just... And then he just abandons his name. It's like...
Daniel, you know what?
Yeah.
Pretty good Lynch.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have been working on it. But...
Well, Daniel, speaking of David Lynch, I'm sure... David Lynch was not involved in your biggest disappointment of 2022.
No,
what was your film?
He was not. So there was a few. It was kind of hard because there was a few. I mentioned Men earlier, and that was one I was thinking of just because I wanted so much more out of Garland in that. And then I also think with the Raimi film, Multiverse of Madness, I was considering it just because, again, love for Sam Raimi, but that was a bit of an abomination, if I'm being real. And then Don't Worry, Darling, and Halloween Ends. Those are films I wanted to see succeed, and they really did not. But they were not my biggest disappointment. My biggest disappointment was one I just caught on Christmas Eve, which is Avatar: Way of Water.
Why do you come to us? I just want to keep my family safe. Treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways. Keep up, Forest Boy!
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
Let's do it.
Just breathe. Breathe.
It is visually stunning, and it is doing something on a technical level that's really cool. But for a film that took 13 years to make, I wish the script felt like it took more than 12 days to write, because it's just like, it just feels, yes, I get tropes are what Cameron does best. And I guess that it's like a bit of fun for the whole family. And I think there's this balance, you hear it all the time between showing and telling, but like with James Cameron, he just can't show and tell you. It's like show and then tell and then tell and then tell and then tell you one more time and then maybe show you a little bit, but then we're just going to tell you everything like verbatim to the point where I'm like, feel like I'm getting talked down to a little bit. And I don't like to be insulted by a film like that. And again, just so much bloat to it. It has just like, there's probably like 50 minutes of that movie that just feels downright unnecessary. And I think it's weird. Like the effect I've been thinking about it for a little bit, and I think part of it, and there are sequences I like in this film. It's good, but Laron, in your review on Facebook, I believe, of this, you mentioned that it's probably going to be about as memorable as the first one. Ultimately, it's going to be acknowledged and lauded, I think, very briefly for the technical achievement, but like nothing beyond that gives it any. It doesn't have any sustain. I do think it might be better than the first Avatar, but again, it's really hard for me to choose.
You can be mad about that, but James Cameron knows how to sell tickets, and
he does. And I'm not saying this film is going to be. It already is massively successful.
Well, you know what's funny about this movie is the people are determined to write this second movie as a failure, even though it's critically been generally well received and it's making hand over fist money. And people keep saying,
"I see you, Dan. We're not getting to 5." I'm saying it right now.
We're getting to 4.
We'll get to 3, of course.
Well, the 3 is basically in the can.
But I don't think 3 is going to do it. I think they've got an off ramp for 3, is what I've heard. Right? Like they've got the option to close it out at 3 movies. I don't think they're going to make enough money, dude. This is already not tracking. This isn't tracking to have the legs the first one had.
Are you? I don't know, man. It is tracking pretty well. And now
it's down from second weekend, which is the first one was up from second.
Yeah, but this also had a much larger opening.
True.
And the drop, the parallel they're comparing it to is Rogue One.
Mm-hmm. It's not doing the numbers they wanted it to do in China because they still take COVID seriously.
Yeah. Nah, for real. It's not going to make as much money as Avatar 1, but I don't think it needs to. I just think it needs to make anywhere from $1.5 to $2 billion, and I think it will make that.
And I think the third one needs to do it too. And I can't.
Yeah, the third one is
no way.
Yeah, the third one's going to be a tough sell.
We'll see in 10 years.
Daniel, you were perfectly allowed to not like the movie. I am the one person here who really likes it, but like it also has tons of flaws, and like it's all about whether you vibe with what it's doing. I also think it has a very important environmental message that a lot of people decide not to talk about.
It is a hell of an experience to see some of that stuff in IMAX 3D. It does work at parts, but that's not enough to.
And I think if there was a hierarchy here of reception for it, I think you're at the top. I think I'm right behind you. And then I think it's Dalton, and then I think you're right at the bottom.
Probably that sounds about right. I don't know. Like the fact that I'm most connecting to the villains of the film is not a good sign.
Well, yeah.
But no, I think that's. I do think that's by design. Are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about Quaritch? Or
I'm talking about Quaritch, baby. Yeah. I want him to kill everybody. Fuck them all. Let's go. I don't know. I'm being facetious a little bit.
We're going to move on. I'm just going to say right now, my most disappointing of the year was Men. I'm going to leave it there. We've already talked about it. It was not the best Alex Garland film.
Why do you hate Men?
Compared to every other Alex Garland project, it feels incomplete and kind of hollow.
I agree.
Not a bad, again, not terrible, but not great. Just an overall disappointment. Let's get on to the Babu Frik Memorial Award.
Who's that flyer?
Take a guess, Spice Runner.
This one was also suggested by Dalton. So Babu Frik, for those of you who do not know the legendary Babu Frik, he is the one redeeming trait of Rise of Skywalker. He is the cute little puppet guy who shows up 3 or 4 times and he steals the scene. This award is designed to be given to the performer or character or director, so have you, that was very, very memorable and stuck out against perhaps not a very great project. So Dalton, since you named this award, who would you give it out to?
Well, this isn't a project that I like quite a bit, but the scene stealer for me is year number 5. It's the menu, but it's Hong Chow. She's so, dude, as soon as they get off the boat and she shows up, the movie like clicks into place for me. She is just the embodiment of every like serious front of house person in such a real way that it's just like, oh no, she talked to some people to become this character. Like this is so real. And just like such it's operating at so many levels. So she's doing funny, she's doing menace. I think she's just getting to do so much in that role, and it's such a fun, meaty role for her. Again, like you mentioned Ray Fiennes in your review, and you know, obviously the Yes Chef stuff is kind of undeniable, but I really think what she's got going on and sort of the second tier of characters with a little less screen time in that movie. I love it. I love everything she's doing.
Every time she says enjoy, you're just like, she's just saying F you.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's so good. Yeah, there's so many levels to everything she says in that movie.
Hong Chow, she gets our first round from Dalton Stuart, our first annual Babu Frik Memorial Award. Laron Chapman.
Very funny. Hong Chow was also my choice, but not for the menu, for the whale.
Oh, okay.
I think, you know, to have Brendan Fraser being so large, no, not meaning that intentionally, but in that film,
his presence is
so large in that
large.
film. He's going for it. You know what I mean? Like to have another character in there that stands out, you know, that is so strong and is like matching him scene to scene emotionally. For me, yeah, she was a huge scene stealer in that. I expected Brendan Fraser to be great just from everything was said, and he didn't hit the mark there for me. But I think the surprise was that Hong Chow was also very good in it. So
Hong Chow, great selection. Her and Colin Farrell, man, just killer year.
Great year.
Daniel Bokemper, who would you give the Babu Frik Memorial Award?
It might be obvious by this point, but and again, this is a film that he appears in a film that itself is not bad, but it was a film that was kind of still good, but not to that next level. But just his presence alone for all of 2 minutes, just I felt like elevated the film and just ends on such a high note. And of course, I'm referring to David Lynch in The Fabelmans. I don't want to speak too much about his small cameo, but
it's amazing.
It is incredible. It is absolutely a scene stealer, and it does so much with so little. And I can't even imagine how much it took. Like, I feel like there had to be quite a bit of convincing to get David Lynch to appear in this role, despite it being a Spielberg film. But I'm not saying it's like impossible or unheard of, but it definitely caught me off guard when I saw it, and I was so satisfied with it. And I don't want to say too much about his specific performance because I risk spoiling the film itself. But David Lynch and The Fabelmans definitely, I feel like, just sent that film up a notch for me right at the very end when I least expected it.
Yeah, if you ever question whether Spielberg was capable of great comedy,
yeah,
because I think a lot of people think he's overly sentimental and whatnot, and in a lot of his movies, no, he's still got it.
Oh yeah.
I am Hong Chow for The Menu is also my pick here, but I'm going to list off a few other words that I really, really enjoyed. Colin Farrell in The Batman specifically. He actually is a genuine supporting character. He doesn't have a ton of screen time, but man, he owns the scene. Jake Gyllenhaal in Ambulance was actually one of my picks. He is chewing the scenery. He's hamming it up, and it either works for you or it doesn't.
A lot of mustard on the sandwich.
Oh, so much mustard.
Wish I loved that movie like you guys did, or appreciate that movie like you guys did. It was the shortest review I've ever written on Facebook. I write 3-paragraph reviews. It was like, well, that was a Michael Bay movie. That was my review. And that was the whole review.
That is an accurate review. And you're either into it or you're not. And that's okay. And I thought, I will say for the record, I actually thought I was going to hate that movie going in because I hated the trailer. Yeah, sure. Anyway. Lastly, shout out to Russell Crowe in Thor: Love and Thunder. A movie I thought was just all right. Like, I liked things about it. Wasn't overly impressed, but it also wasn't bad. But Russell Crowe shows up for a couple scenes.
He's chewing that scenery up.
He's got an accent that I will never forget. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing. I'll keep watching it. All right. This brings us to our final round, only coming in at 3 hours, gentlemen. What is your number one movie of 2022 and why? Laron Chapman.
My number one movie of 2022 is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I feel like it's that little indie movie that I saw at South by Southwest. It just, it was great energy in the crowd. The Daniels, they made, what was the one, Swiss Army Man, that I don't love as much as a lot of people do. I appreciate the craftsmanship of it, but this was the one that finally got me on board with them, where I finally understood their weird, quirky sensibilities. But a movie that involves hot dog fingers, butt plugs, spoilers, I guess, but and then still is so relatable and still so human and still so heartbreaking. So to string all those weird, absurd things together in the same kaleidoscope of a movie, and have it come out and be this, really just brilliant, zany, over the top. I don't even know how you categorize it. Is it a comedy? Is it an action movie? Is it all of it? So it's everything, everywhere, all at once. And I loved it.
Yeah. Taking big swings. Dalton, Stuart, what is your number one movie of the
My
year?
number one with a bullet, and it's not even fucking close, is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Did we all pick Everything Everywhere All at Once? No.
What's happening?
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of the memories, their emotions, even the skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
It's really good.
I don't think I can say it any better than Laron did. It's doing so much, and it's doing it all incredibly well. It just makes me want to give everybody I care about a big hug.
Yes.
I think it's a great movie.
Absolutely.
I can't say enough nice things about it. If you haven't caught up with it, I cannot more strongly urge you to do that right now.
It's a blind buy, not a blind rent. It's a blind buy.
Being a Daniel, I am contractually obligated to celebrate the Daniels' films. Everything Everywhere All at Once is my number one. And again, it is similarly not even close. I will agree with you. You all are absolutely correct with what you say. I do want to point out Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan, and his, but also Jamie Lee Curtis. Just stellar performance. Jenny Slate. Jenny Slate's in it.
Stephanie Sue in two roles.
Stephanie Sue, yes. And it's just all so good.
They made us cry at two rocks with googly eyes looking out the cliff.
They cried hard too. Like I was not crying. It was like
it was just sensory overload, and just seeing it with someone, and just like seeing it in theaters. I saw it with Caleb, but another friend of the show, Harold Story, was right next to me, and just the camaraderie and the closeness and just the intimacy of watching that film and just laughing our asses off, but also crying at the same time and just feeling so pulled. And I think out of all of those things, because man, this film is so much fantastic. I cannot rave about it enough. And I think it deserves all the acclaim it's getting. I do to some extent I have heard some criticisms about it, saying, it's sensory overload, saying it's maybe so sentimental it almost, desensitizes people a little bit to it, like it's overly sappy. I don't. I like the sappiness. I will say maybe with like a film like The Whale, maybe that's a film that kind of like almost made me a little emotionally fatigued.
It doesn't have to be for everybody.
No, it doesn't. But I get it. I just want to say I hear the criticisms, and I don't think somebody who doesn't just think this film is the greatest thing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to like tar and feather anybody who doesn't like this movie. And there's kind of a weird contingent of like being mean to people who don't like this movie.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
and it's not fair.
Who does that serve?
It's also movies.
There's a lot of people I respect that have issues with it. Some of them with runtime, some of it with the sentimentality. Some people can't keep up with the editing. I think it's definitely tailored to a younger audience with that in mind. Like, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work for you.
Right. Yeah. And I think what this film instills, and you could say this a lot about films. You could say this about Avatar: Way of the Water if you want to. But I think what this film did for me, and what it just kept me taking away, what keeps me think is a little bit of just idealism and a little slice of inspiration. I just think like no matter how big and dumb, potentially stupid your dreams are, especially in regard to like the stories we want to tell and the stories we feel compelled to tell as artists, I think they both have justification to exist if your heart's in the right place, and I think they have justification to exist in the biggest way possible for the most people to enjoy. I think this film helps people dream, and a lot of films do that. Films as a whole can help us do that, but I think this one just really captures that and celebrates it, and then makes sure that regardless of how fantastical your dreams get and how wild your imagination can be, it can still be about very, very, very real things. And it just gives me hope.
And even if you fail at all those things,
exactly,
that doesn't mean that you are a failure. And even if you are a failure, that might lead you to something that you didn't know you were looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this film I feel like one thing I kept thinking about when I watched this film was thinking about a documentary I didn't know about until a few years ago, Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yeah,
about the original Dune that never existed. And that is a film about such a wild imagination and such a grand vision that we just simply were not ready for. And it never existed beyond a concept book. And I think this film is in a way that, but manifest. And I don't know. It's just something I find myself.
It's weird that it even exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think about it in the construction of it. I'm like, how did you conceive the idea of this?
Well, that's what's great about it is it's so wildly ambitious and creative, and it throws so many things at the wall that all somehow the thing they have in common is the heart and the themes. The movie is really a very broad thematic story.
Yeah. It made sense
but all
of the
these
chaos,
things tie together through those themes. It's really powerful and really brilliant, and it shouldn't work.
Yeah,
but it does.
No. It does. It works really well.
I don't have anything else to add other than this movie. When I saw it, I was like, "This is my number one movie of the year."
Yeah, it's just weird too. It's one of those things where it's like Parasite that you're.
It was. I was like, "This is number one, and nothing's even close." I'm just gonna something eventually is gonna catch it.
Yeah. I thought I was so sure. I was like, okay, maybe it's Tar. And when I went to see Tar a second time, I was like, ooh, this character's like totally screenplay invention. It doesn't exist in the real world. This section's a little long in the tooth. Like every time I kept thinking something was going to overtake it. It just it's been number one since March.
Yep.
And it's again, not even close.
the snobby part of me as a filmmaker wants to say, everyone loves this, so I can't make this my number one.
That's where I'm at.
But it truly is the best movie I've seen this year. So,
and again, I know we had a lot of cynicism at the top of this podcast about the state of Hollywood, but this movie, like it was the Cinderella story at the box office every single week. It stayed number one.
A24's most successful.
$103 million worldwide against a budget of anywhere from 14 to 25 million. In the U.S., it was in the top 10 at the box office for 16 consecutive weekends.
You can invest in non-IP original content, indie filmmakers. It will make money. Just give it a chance. They don't have to be Top Gun, even though I love it.
Well, that's my whole argument, tying into some podcasts we had related to Avatar, and I'll wrap it up because we've been going for a long time. But the thing that's dangerous about the way studios operate and the way that a lot of the technology and marketing tools they have available to them operate is they only know how to work off of the data they have. They don't have the data they don't have. So you don't know what's possible without taking big risks and big swings. It's like, this Marvel film's going to make at least $600 million, but maybe you do a James Cameron Avatar and it makes almost $3 billion. And so this is one of the biggest cases I've seen in a long time where it's like, this movie got put out there based off of, I guess, Michelle Yeoh. Like it's crazy. And I hope that we can get more creatives that are motivated and inspired by this and more executives who look at this and say, yeah, we need to take some bigger swings from time to time. All that said, gentlemen, we've been going for a long time. I'm just going to throw out there really very quickly, if we could do a summation. My last two awards are the Never Bet Against James Cameron Award. As the joke goes about Big Jim, it's that he has two of the highest grossing movies of all time, Titanic and Avatar, both of which people were saying would fail. So I'm just going to throw out there. I already read you some box office numbers. My pick here actually was not James Cameron's Avatar. It's Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a Cinderella story. It's great. It's going against the odds creatively, financially. It succeeded. Daniel Bokemper.
I didn't like this movie that much, but Damien Leone's Terrifier 2 somehow just had
another one. Yeah.
Really good box office success despite being made for $500,000. I think it grossed over 10 million. I think it was 12 yen on a very, very limited theater run. Again,
the horror nuts will come out, man.
Yeah, they will, and the gore hounds as well.
They brought me out.
Yeah, and if you market it as the sickest shit you've ever seen, people will show up.
Like I said,
it's pretty close.
It is. I don't feel good about it, and again, I don't want to say it's good, but I did not expect something that seemed like a basically what I thought had to have been a Shudder original is actually, a fairly successful film. So hats off to Damien Leone, I guess, for Terrifier 2.
Laron Chapman, what is your Never Bet Against James Cameron award?
My Never Bet Against James Cameron award is a movie that came out in January on my birthday. You were at my birthday for it, for Scream 5. I felt like that's a movie that should not have done well this year. It is the fifth installment to a long-running franchise. The fourth one tapered off and proved that there wasn't a huge interest in this franchise anymore, but the fifth one somehow added this resurgence to the franchise, and now they're already starting another trilogy. The next one already comes out, next year, early next year. Hoping it's good. It's in New York. I'm excited. It's a new environment. Ghostface on in the subway station. That just speaks to my soul. So yeah, Scream 5 is the one that I didn't expect to do very well, and surprisingly did, and showed that there is a way to do these movies again.
Dalton Stuart, what is your pick for the Never Bet Against Big Jim award?
I truly cannot believe that David Leitch's Bullet Train limped to $100 million domestic and $200 million worldwide.
They made it to $200 million worldwide?
Yeah, baby.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
They limped right along. People like this movie. I'm in a Discord server where people are starting to catch up with this one on Netflix, and people like it. I don't know. I don't think it's very good. I go watch Smokin' Aces. This movie has already existed a dozen times. Bullet Train is fine.
How does it hold up to John Wick? Any of them?
Not even close, dude.
That's what I thought. No. I could tell it was trying really hard.
No,
Leitch
it actually
is not.
Is it not? That's what I got from the marketing.
Leitch is just not of Stahelski and Leitch, the two who collaborate on John Wick 1. He's just not. He's making more interesting movies as far as trying to do original stuff, Atomic Blonde and this, as where Stahelski's just staying in the John Wick groove. But I get why. Stahelski's just a better storyteller, a better visual storyteller. He just knows where to put the camera when it comes to like shooting action.
That was the biggest weakness of Bullet Train was the trappings of the fun genre stuff were all there and the over the top characters, but the action was just not even close.
They didn't make Brad Pitt learn jiu-jitsu. That's half the job right there. Yeah. You got to make your lead actor learn how to fight.
Mm-hmm. That said, as predicted, Dalton, I have in fact turned that movie on twice and fallen asleep to it. So
Bullet Train?
It's the perfect turn it on for 15 minutes and fall asleep over 3 different nights movie. It's great.
Beautiful.
All right. Last but certainly not least, special award, the Blind Spot of the Year award, Laron Chapman.
Decision to Leave. It's one I truly wanted to see, missed it at the art museum. Will see it eventually, hopefully before I make my top 10 list or top 25 list. Didn't get a chance to see it. Love that filmmaker, but didn't get a chance to see it.
Dalton Stuart?
I'll leave right now.
I am also on my way out the door so I can catch up with Ruben Östlund's Triangle of Sadness.
Oh, yes!
I like Force Majeure quite a bit. I think that's a really good movie, and I've been really curious to check this out. Always excited about a Woody Harrelson performance, especially one that looks this fun. Very intrigued by this movie. Ready to see some rich people throw up all over themselves.
I have to say, Dalton, I watched this one a few weeks ago, and it's one of those, it's not even a top 15, but that does not mean it is not a hell of a time and just quite the experience and also just a really damn good movie.
Bring a barf bag and some Dramamine.
Yeah, so I've heard.
You can't beat the Woody Harrelson. Daniel Bokemper.
Yeah, so it's hard. I've in fact am reminded of blind spots throughout this podcast, and there's a part of me that probably would have originally said The Menu. And I still want to acknowledge that as my honorable mention for Blind Spot, but it's got to be Todd Field's Tar.
Yeah.
I need to see that film, and I am beating myself up every day that I
Hey, maybe you'll hate it. People hate it.
I know, yeah.
But maybe even if you do,
you're all wrong.
You'll have you'll have an interesting time.
Yeah.
Good.
It is on DVD and Blu-ray right now. So you can find it everywhere.
And even if you hate it, you'll at least walk away, I think, thinking about some stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely. No, I will absolutely watch it. I suspect it is a film that I will like, but we'll see.
I'm going to cheat and say documentaries in general. I saw a handful of documentaries, none of them that were super substantive. I was going over my list here. I saw Senior, just saw that. That's the RDJ, Robert Downey documentary. It was all right.
You want to cry real good?
Yeah, sure, Daniel.
Wildcat?
Oh, that was actually one of the ones I had listed in here.
Yeah, pretty sad.
Yeah, pretty sad. I caught a couple, but none that I thought were like super impressive. Definitely not the heavy hitters. I really wanted to see Fire of Love. I didn't see Moonage Daydream, which is that David Bowie doc.
Moonage Daydream's pretty fun.
Yeah, I liked it.
Especially in IMAX. It was...
Yeah, but that ruled.
Oh, man.
It performed in IMAX. In fact, that's how it premiered, and it was fantastic.
Talk about a movie I should have seen in theater.
Yeah.
I also, just based off of kind of like reading around, that the documentary 3 minutes sounded really, sounded like one of those strap-in kind of documentaries, but it sounded really compelling. So documentaries are historically a blind spot. I have some years where I get really into them and watch a ton, but most years it's like, I catch like 2 or 3, and then I try to get so focused on the scripted stuff. By the time we get to the end of the year, I'm like, oh crap, I ran out of time.
Well, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, also really great. Didn't make my top 10 list, but absolutely loved it as well. So
I am putting it.
I think it's the only doc this year I got to, honestly. But yeah, it
was worth it. Yeah,
totally worth it.
Yeah.
I've got it on my list. Try to catch that before I vote in the OFCC. All right, ladies and gentlemen, those are our top 5 films of 2022. I have here a question about our top 3 most anticipated movies of 2023. If we can all agree to just rapid fire shout them out really fast, I think we can still do that. So I'll go around the table, starting to my left. Daniel Bokemper, what are your 3 most anticipated films of next year?
Well, Dune Part 2. Of course, Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool with Mia Goth in it. And then I haven't been like super excited about a Wes Anderson film in a while, but like, I don't know, Asteroid City has me kind of excited. And I think like if it can capture a little of that old Rushmore glory, I think I'll be in for a good time. So those are my 3.
Great picks. I'm taking Dune 2 off my plate now. Laron Chapman.
Scream 6, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Barbie.
Oh God! I forgot Killers of the Flower Moon is allegedly going to come out.
Allegedly, I thought it should have been this year. I saw. By the way, side tangent. There's an entirely other Martin Scorsese movie that is on the docket for next summer about the Roosevelt and. Killers of the Flower Moon, I can't find a release date for. So, hey, we'll see if it comes out.
Well, that's true. It was supposed to come out this year, but we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see next year.
Dalton, Stuart?
I am also very excited for Greta Gerwig's Barbie and Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Can't wait for those films. And I am also very excited about Elizabeth Banks' Cocaine Bear.
Yes.
Can't wait. That's going to be a good time.
Okay, I'm going to try to write off a couple that haven't been mentioned yet. Come on, guys. Tom Cruise. He did it with Top Gun Maverick. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. They're bringing back characters from the first movie. They're going to somehow try to retroactively tell us this was all part of one continuity the whole time.
It's going to be sick.
He's going to jump off of whatever that motorcycle, Daredevil motorcycle trip is. I'm into it. I'm going to see it in the IMAX. I can't wait. I love, similar to the John Wick movies, I love how dedicated Tom Cruise is to doing real life stunts. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I really didn't think I was going to be pumped about that movie, but damn, that trailer is really good. And I love James Mangold and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. It's got some good ingredients in there. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's a superhero movie, which I'm generally over, but the Into the Spider-Verse was, I think, is a very rare exception where they're innovating and pushing animation forward and really taking some big swings with the storytelling. So I'm a big fan of that. And just casual shout out. Again, you guys have all mentioned some of my others that I would have picked, but Oppenheimer. Chris Nolan movie. Coming out next year. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our top 5 films of 2022, our awards, and our movies we're looking forward to most next year. Gentlemen, I'm sure listeners want to know where they can keep up with you and your work online. Dalton, Stewart.
If you want to check out more of me talking about movies, you can find us over at the GoodTrash Genrecast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you put podcasts in your ears. We're going 10 years strong. We are about to put out our annual January Anti-Trash Marathon. Usually we're the show where we talk about the films you wouldn't discuss in a film studies course. Every January, we do the opposite. We talk about the canon. So this year we're covering Breathless, M, Tokyo Drifter, and Blood Simple. And then towards the end of January, we'll probably do a top 5 over there. So if you want to see if my list changes, there's a good chance it might. I'm wishy-washy. There's a good chance I'll move Tar around. Maybe Barbarian or Women Talking will make it into the final top 5. Who knows? But that's GoodTrash Genrecast if you want to find me talking about movies. At GoodTrash Media on Twitter if you want to follow us. I'm at Doll_Stu if you want to keep up with me, but I don't tweet a whole ton. I'm just Dalton Stewart on Letterboxd, so if you want to follow me there, I'm very active and love to read other people's reviews. So it's just Dalton Stewart over on Letterboxd.
Very nice. Man, it's a shame we ran out of time to mention Barbarian and honorable mentions, but Barbarian, great movie.
Sick film.
Laron Chapman, where can people follow you online?
You can follow me under my name, Laron Chapman, on Facebook, or you can follow all of my reviews on Letterboxd at black_Cine_man.
Excellent. Daniel Bokemper?
Yeah, you can find me 3 reviews, actually. The Whale, Glass Onion, and of course, Pinocchio. It didn't make my top 5, but it was still a film I very much liked. Find 3 reviews, a triple thread of reviews over on the Cinematropolis, excuse me. Additionally, you can find me on Flick Attack, occasionally writing a little more shorter form reviews. And then also Twitter, Daniel_Bokemper. Not super active there, but you can usually find most of my stuff. But also Letterboxd, just Daniel Bokemper on Letterboxd. I wish I got a little more creative with my name there, but I didn't. So.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, what we're saying is you should get a Letterboxd account. Okay?
Yes.
That's really where the action's at. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd and Instagram if you just want to see photos. All C Masters Talk. That is letter C Masters Talk. Letterboxd for movie reviews, Twitter for mostly still movie reviews, and sometimes video game opinions, and Instagram for photos that have nothing to do with movies 99% of the time. So, and of course, you can find all of the podcasts we do here on the Cinematic Schematic over at the Cinematropolis.com. Daniel Bokemper, Laron Chapman, Dalton Stewart. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for spending over 3 hours of this evening talking about 2022 in film. I owe you guys a beer. Thanks, gents. Cheers. Listeners, until next time, we'll catch you again in 2023.